Okay, Mayor, we are now live.
Thank you. Welcome to the May 26, 2020 regular City Council meeting for the East Lansing City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Please, Councilmember Babcock, can you please unmute so people can hear you?
Good. That means all the swearing I did over multiple screens wasn't recorded. I'm present.
Councilmember Craig,
Here.
Councilmember Meadows,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Here.
Mayor Byer.
Here. Thank you. The next item is approval of the agenda. I move that we approve today's agenda. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Gray. Any changes or comments to the agenda? Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. The agenda is approved. The next item, 1.3, approval of the minutes from May 19th, 2020. I move approval of those minutes. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Meadows. Any discussions, changes, questions? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes from May 19th, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. The minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda, 2.1, is written communication or communications. 2.1 is written communications received by council. All written communications have been posted on the packet online. I had one communication email me today for the second time to make sure it was up there. So the person that sent that it is up there. It's in as an add-on in the communication section under add-on written communication. Anybody else who sent a communication and if it has not yet been posted, please send me an email and I will make sure it gets posted next time. All right, 2.2, communications from the audience. So the way we do this on Zoom is your phone number will be called, the last 4 digits of your number, and you will be asked if you want to comment. We're limiting comments. We did this with the resolution to 5 minutes, and you will be told when there's 30 seconds to go. Right now, we have quite a few business items, public hearings, 4.1 through 4.5. If you are speaking on a public hearing, you can speak during the public comment now, or you can speak during the public hearing itself. Sometimes that works a little bit better because then we get all of the comments on a particular issue together. And that seems to be a little bit more impactful when you're talking about something in particular. Okay, so let's start with also, what we're going to do to make sure everybody gets their full 5 minutes is if you are commenting and you have a question for a specific council member, go ahead and ask. But that person will write it down, or if you have a question for all of council, that person will people will write down the question and answer it when you're finished. That way we can make sure you get your full 5 minutes. All right, so let's start with 2.2, communications for the first person in the audience.
Thank you, Mayor. The first caller is phone number ending in 963. 963, you may now address council.
Thanks, Alice Drager, 621 Sunset Lane. Just a couple of quick things. One, just I'm hoping when you get to 4.4, which is the rezoning of Lot 4, that you could have staff explain the status of the MSU-FCU project. That wasn't in the packet. Second, on item 3.11, which is the policy resolution on service reduction, I'm a bit confused about why council needs to pass such a resolution. It looks like the city manager has the power to do this. And I'm also wondering why something that significant for a lot of people's lives is on a consent agenda. On item 2.5, which is the quarterly status litigation report, I'm trying to understand with Mr. Schumacher if the city is really seeking to jail an old man who appears to be mentally ill over a zoning violation. I've seen the fence/retaining wall myself, and it's quite something. But it seems to be an obvious sign of a man in need of help beyond being jailed. And finally, this is not an item on the agenda, but I appreciate the mayor getting an answer for me. I asked the question passed on from a reader earlier today about whether or not MSU and the city of East Lansing are regularly meeting with regard to issues of the public health emergency, in particular with the question of reopening. And the answer came back from the city manager by way of the mayor, quote, "We are not on the committee, but I have a standing phone call with Janet Lilly every 2 weeks, and she provides general updates. At this point, they are anticipating making a decision by the end of June or the beginning of July." I shared this with the reader who had the reaction that I also did, which was surprised that the city of East Lansing is not a regular member of the committee at MSU dealing with the question of reopening, given the massive impact closure or reopening will have on the city of East Lansing in terms of finances, with the income tax, in terms of businesses, in terms of policing, in terms of leases. I was surprised that it appears that the city of East Lansing is getting updates less frequently than many of the rest of us are able to get. So just a comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strager. As I said, I will answer a couple of your questions. First of all, the service reductions, the reason they're there and they're being passed is because this is something that city council owns. I mean, the reason they're being asked to be approved, and we don't, we think that this is a reasonable thing to do given our probable budget disaster coming up. And so it's something we embrace, whether it's something that the city manager could do by himself or not. I actually encourage the city manager to put this on the agenda. And then secondly, about the status of MSU FTU, I will ask that to be included in that report. And about surprised that we are not members of an MSU committee. I agree with you, but we never have been. MSU has to make its decisions based on the health of their students, and we will react to whatever decision that they make for the health of the city. And I think that's the only explanation I can come up with. Would anybody else like to comment? Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, just as a side note, I mean, I do think that, I don't think they know what they're doing yet, but I am all on board with more communication on their end. I think that, we had to be very reactionary in terms of the bar scene, in terms of the amount of people that were gathering before a lot of stay-at-home orders were put in place, and a lot of the restrictions were put in place, and that could have put people at risk. And so, I do agree with you. It's a big issue, and I do think we should be part of the conversation.
Anybody else? Okay, Ms. Bartel.
Thank you.
Yep.
The next caller on the list is caller ending in 333.
I'm on the call to speak on the public hearing about policing. I can't get the video, so that's why I'm on the phone right now, but I'd like to speak at the public hearing time.
Okay, thank you. Just make sure you stay on or get back on then, and we'll go through every number at that time. In
I'll
fact,
stay on.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. And the next caller's phone number ending in 932.
Hi, yeah, I would like to stay on for the public hearing as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next caller is phone number ending in 314.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. My name is Ray Lawson, and I live at 1854 Cricket Lane in East Lansing, Michigan, and I am making an oral comment only. I commend council members for their commitment to create a study committee on an independent police oversight commission. This is really a great proposed action, and I and others should all support it. I want to emphasize one thing tonight, namely the crucial importance of the relationship between our city government and the study committee. As written now, the resolution indicates that the mayor would be chairperson of the study committee. While that likely sends a strong message that the council is very serious about proceeding to address abuses, it also sends other unintended messages, some of which are quite negative. To some persons, the unintended message may be that the council wants to maintain an element of control throughout the work of the committee and over the recommendations of the study committee. To some, it may appear that the study committee will not be trusted to make the correct analysis and come up with the best recommendations about policies and procedures for the Oversight Commission. For a few, it may say that city government wants to make sure nothing really controversial will be said in the report to be rendered by the study committee. And to a few, it may say that city government wants to deal with the abuses in the ways it believes best, not in the ways that may serve the aggrieved parties and groups the best. More than a few may raise questions why city government is influencing the recommendations and the outcome of the study committee on one hand, and then putting on a different hat to independently explore the findings and act on them. To avoid these unintended messages and also build community trust, I strongly urge that the council not appoint an elected official or an employee of city government to be chairperson of the study committee. Instead, rely on the customary trusted relationship through a designated liaison person to assist the study committee and help it succeed. This will preserve the integrity of the study committee and its work and its report, and it will preserve the council's full integrity and uncompromised freedom to act upon the report once it's received from the study committee. I would be pleased to answer any questions that council members may have, and I thank you for the opportunity to share my view.
Any questions for Mr. Vlasen? Okay, thank you, Mr. Vlasen.
You're very welcome.
Ms. Bartel.
Thank you. The next caller is phone number ending in 203. Caller ending in 203. You may now address council if you would like. Okay, hearing none. It appears that is the end of the list of the attendees for public comment.
Thank you. Anybody who wishes to speak on an issue that is on the agenda later on can do so through on the public hearing agenda. So if you wanted to speak on 4.1 or any other agenda item, I know somebody was trying to get on and did not have a code to get on. Ms. Bartel, will you check your email for that, please, and make sure that person gets a code if they need it?
They shouldn't need a participant ID.
Well, I understand that,
yeah.
but I'm just going to ask Ms. Bartel to deal with that.
Okay.
All right. The next item on the agenda is communications from the mayor and council members. We will start today with Councilmember Babcock.
Good evening. Tonight, we are going to talk about policing, which is an issue that I haven't said much about, but is an issue that I see I've had experience with from both sides. I have close family members who are officers, but I also am a former public defender, and I know to the core of my being how differences in policing can change the entire trajectory of someone's life. And I would like to thank Dr. Edsel for her book that she read at our meeting not long ago, Punishment Without Crime. It was very influential, and I've been thinking about this a lot. We are being asked to address something that predates us by decades. And many of us who are Caucasian, it's easy to say, well, I have no role in this. I'm not a racist. It's fine. I didn't do any of this. And to a certain extent, that's true. However, we're also, as the proverb says, warmed by the fires lit by our grandparents. And we may not have had a direct role in Jim Crow or slavery, but we still unwittingly reap the benefits of it. We are going to start a difficult process tonight. We're going to do one thing, and that's what makes it the difficult process. This is not going to fix everything. It's only going to fix some things. So this is not something that will resolve it. In my mind, it's not going to resolve the difference in how people feel in this community, whether they live here or whether they are visiting here. And I want to be clear about that from the beginning. What we're doing tonight is creating a committee to create a committee. It's a very small step and a very long process. It would be really easy to say, we're East Lansing, this is great, we've got a committee. But that's not the real answer. And so we're all going to do a lot of work, and we're all going to be at this for a very long time. This is not the beginning of the end. It's not even the end of the beginning, but it is a step. And I think that we will all work in good faith. And I hope that something comes of this and more comes of the next step and so on. 400 years of history is a long time to reverse, but it's our obligation to do what we can here and now and going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Councilmember Meadows.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just say ditto to Councilmember Babcock's comments. I think this is a very, very important meeting, and this is I think it is a strong step by City Council, and it will become stronger when the results begin to come in and we actually create whatever is recommended by the study committee that we create tonight. Other than that, I'd just like to stay home, stay safe. It isn't over yet, and we need to pay attention to what the governor is saying every day. It's important for the city, and it's important for every community around us, for us to be the leader in complying with the governor's orders. So that's my only comments this evening.
Thank you. Councilmember Gregg.
Hi. I've got a lot more to say when we get to the Police Oversight Committee discussion. So I'll reserve a lot of my comments for that part of our agenda. I definitely agree with Councilmember Babcock's comments that this is one step and is only one part of our solution. I think we have to not lose sight of that. I think there's a temptation to say that we have done something concrete towards moving towards resolution. And we have to be careful that we don't allow ourselves to lose sight of the fact that there's many moving parts to creating a culture shift within our community. Not contrary to the governor's orders, we have businesses in town that are beginning to get back to work. Apologies for phoning in from my shop today. I'm trying to not share bandwidth with my children. I'm hoping that will lead to a smoother meeting on my end. I've had some technical difficulties, but also just want to, give my voice of support to all of the businesses that are starting to open up with the new by appointment and 10-person restrictions. It is very difficult to figure out how to completely change the way that you interact with your customers basically overnight. So everyone that's trying to adapt to that certainly has my sympathy. And any of our community members who are patronizing local businesses that are getting back to work, just realize that everybody's working hard and things aren't going to be perfect right away. So just keep practicing patience and understanding with everyone in the community as we get through this and find out what's on the other side.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Thanks. One really quick note to those people that I know. I think we have a few more attendees in there, and I've gotten a couple emails. I think they might have been sent to the council account or just me. When you get to the item, if it's a public hearing, you're going to be called on. So if you'd like to speak on that matter, you will be called on. And Nicole will be running through each number individually and giving you an opportunity to speak. Okay, so I talked about this like a little bit last week, and I don't want to reiterate and say the exact same thing that I said last week, but I just want to again point out that the thing that scared me the most out of the video that I watched for the first time when it was released publicly in the logins case was just how such a minimal traffic violation led to what it did. I really think that we have to recognize that that is a scary, scary thing for a lot of people in our community. And I mean, you know, you can nitpick individual instances, decisions in that video, and I've watched that video probably 3 or 4 times through now from the different angles, and I still go back to the fact that it was such a minimal traffic offense in the first place, and what I believe is really a nonviolent issue for the arrest in the first place as well. That being driving while license suspended. I talked about this again at the last meeting, but I'd really like us see if we have the ability to move towards a policy where if they are, if we can get a certain amount of if our officers can get a certain amount of information on why the license is suspended, we're not writing, or we're not doing a custodial arrest. We're just writing an appearance ticket. I just, I think that eliminates, in my opinion, an unnecessary arrest, and it hopefully will lead to less interactions needing one. Just because I'm personally, it scared me how far it went over something that minimal. So I'll save a lot of my comments on the actual oversight committee for when we get to it. But I just wanted to plug that once again. I talked about it a lot at the last meeting. I sent what my thoughts were to a couple of community members. I'm happy to send it to other council members, talk to you guys offline on some of my thoughts on that, but I will move on from there. Thanks. Ruth, you're muted.
You're muted.
That was my best comment so far. My comment also relates to 4.1, and I will reserve most of my comment for that time. I have gotten 2 calls today from people who want me to do things that I don't have the power to do. So I wanted to just have a quick primer on this council manager form of government. Both of these people have called and asked me to fire people. So I want to make sure everybody understands that the mayor in a council manager form of government can't fire people. The council itself, all 5 of us, or a majority of us, can fire 2 people or hire 2 people. We have employment decisions over the city manager and the city attorney, and that's all. We cannot go through the city manager and ask him to fire anybody. So all of the decisions about personnel, including labor negotiations, are done through the city manager's office, not through council. What council can do is set the tone and set the vision. For example, in negotiations, when things are going well, we might say, hey, we really think it's time for everybody to finally get a raise. Or when things are not going well, hey, we think it's a reasonable thing to do to take advantage of a federal program that saves us some money. That kind of thing we can do. We just cannot direct we can't even direct the city manager to do a particular thing. So I just wanted to make that clear, and we will move on to the next item in the communications agenda, which is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment. We have on the agenda later on at the end of the night the approval of the fiscal year 21 budget. I wanted to make a quick comment about the creation of that budget document and all the effort that goes into it. I wanted to thank Jill Felposh, our finance director, Audrey Kincaid, and all the finance staff who spent many, many hours over the past 4 months to get that together, answer council's questions and all of that. I also want to thank all the directors and people within departments for putting together their budget submissions and doing lots of work to come in with budgets that, recognize in a sense the financial situations we're in. I also want to, of course, thank council for your work on the budget. I know that this has been a slightly frustrating process, not being able to meet in person and go over the budget, rather doing it virtually and having a condensed operation for that. So I appreciate your efforts and your questions. And hopefully next year we can be back at a budget process where we're in person and we can have a better interaction regarding that document. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the city attorney's report. Mr. Yaden?
Thank you, Mayor. I have attached for council's review my quarterly status report. I'm happy to discuss any matters in there that council deems appropriate, but other than that, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Any questions for Mr. Yaden? All right. Sorry, Councilmember Babcock.
I would like to, I'm new, I would like to ask about the shoemaker issue. Has the city pursued this both criminally and civilly?
No, this was a zoning violation at the time, which was a criminal offense. So we prosecuted it as a criminal offense. We didn't have, we thought that was our best course of action to get the wall down. At the time we initially prosecuted it, it was an unsteady wall with barbed wire on the top of the wall, extending down the alley where people were walking. That part has since been resolved, but we have just proceeded with the criminal prosecution at this time.
So you're not pursuing civilly, just criminally?
Correct.
Okay. And I may be wrong, but was this the case that resulted in someone spending 10 days in jail? Was it Shoemaker or was it?
It was Mr. Shoemaker, yes. That's my understanding.
And what year was that?
You know, when he actually did the time, I don't know. It was a result of a probation violation. So it was basically the court had part of it. Well, the only condition of his probation was to bring the fence into conformity with the city code. And when he failed to do that repeatedly, the judge, I believe, put him in jail for violating his probation.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what year was that?
I don't have that in front of me. I'm sorry. I can get that for you.
Okay. Can you give me an idea of how many years this has been going on?
Again, that's information that I can probably dig through the report and get it, but it's been a number of years at this point. Mr. Shoemaker is very litigious.
Councilmember Babcock, if it helps, I think it came in my first term, so it's been at least 4 years.
And the wall is still up?
Correct.
Are there any other mechanisms we could use? Well, perhaps we should put this on a discussion agenda, how we proceed in these cases, because if it's been at least 4 years, we're running appeals, he spent 10 days in jail, and the wall is still up. Perhaps we need to find another solution.
I'd be happy to discuss that with council.
Thank you.
Our options are.
Any other questions? Councilmember Stevens.
Yeah, could we get especially for some of the newer council members, and actually it's been going on since Ruth's first term, maybe a little bit of a refresher for me, just kind of on history of that case to the council.
Did you want that now?
You can do it in writing, in email.
Sure.
Okay, sure. Maybe
Certainly.
have it as a written communication on the next agenda or something. Yeah.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which will be read by our city manager.
Okay, thank you. We have the following items on the consent agenda for council's consideration. Item 3.1, approve the resolution to change precinct 11 polling location from Bircham Hills Retirement Community to Hannah Community Center West Gymnasium for the August 4, 2020 state primary election only. 3.2, approve assurances form for a Michigan Council of the Arts and Cultural Affairs fiscal year 2021 capital improvements program grant application for phase 3 upgrades to the lighting system and theater enhancements in the Albert A. White Performing Arts Theater in the East Lansing Hannah Community Center. Authorize the city manager to sign. Item 3.3, introduce and set a public hearing for June 9, 2020 to consider Ordinance 1485, an ordinance to amend Section 32-105 of the sign code to correct an error caused by the adoption of Ordinance 1464 relative to projecting signs. Item 3.4, approve an additional amount for the property claim settlement with Joyce Boutros in an amount not to exceed $2,900 and authorize the finance director to settle after obtaining a full release from the claimant before tendering funds. Item 3.5, authorize the city manager to sign an assurances form fiscal year 21 MCA-CA as supporting documentation to the Michigan Council for the Arts and Cultural Affairs MCA-CA project support grant application. The MCA-CA project support grant will provide additional funding for the East Lansing Art Festival, Summer Solstice Jazz Festival, and All of Us Express Children's Theater to assist with artist fees, marketing, and supplies. Item 3.6, approve the purchase of the D-Tech International Hold It kiosk in the amount of $45,000, which will allow for the 24/7 access to requested materials at the East Lansing Public Library. Item 3.7, approve change order number 8 for the Water Resource Recovery Facility, WRF, Headworks and Interceptor Improvements Project in the amount of $142,958, and change order number 4 for the WRF Biosolids Handling Improvements With Digestion Project in the amount of $125,911. And that the change orders be paid from the WRF's fiscal year 2020 maintenance budget and authorize the city manager to sign. Item 3.8, introduce and set for public hearing on June 9, 2020, Ordinance 1486 to amend Section 26-54 of Division 2, Disorderly Conduct of Article 2, Offenses Against Public Peace and Order of Chapter 26, Offenses, and to add Article 3, Open Air Dining Areas, to Chapter 28, Parks and Recreation, to the Code of the City of East Lansing to establish open air dining areas and to allow for the consumption of alcohol therein. Item 3.9, approve an adjustment to the fee schedule to allow for 2 hours free parking in all gated facilities from June 1, 2020 to June 30, 2020. 3.10, authorize the mayor to extend the declaration of local state of emergency as needed through June 30th, 2020. Item 3.11, consideration of policy resolution 2020-03, a resolution concurring with service reductions. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council's consideration.
All right, I will.
Hang on, sorry, Aaron. Sorry, I just spilled something. Thank you, Mr. Lahanis. Thank you for being ready to go, Mr. Stevens. Would anybody like anything removed from the consent agenda? Mr. Stevens.
Can we get 3.11 put on the business agenda?
Yes, it will become business agenda item 5.1 and the other 2 will be renumbered.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. We are now moving on to the public hearings and let's start with 4.1.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes.
There wasn't a vote on the consent agenda.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. So I move approval of the consent agenda with the one removal of 3.11. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Meadows. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as with the one amendment, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same. Consent agenda is approved. Now we're moving on to the public hearing. 4.1, consideration of a resolution to establish a police community relations review committee. I think I am the staff person. Yes, I am the staff contact on this. We talked quite a bit about this last time. As was mentioned a couple of times already today, I see this as a first step one step, I guess we've already made some steps in improving the situation for minorities in East Lansing. And I want to make it really clear to our police department and our residents of all colors. I do not think that our city staff, including the police department, is any more influenced by racism than the general public in East Lansing. That said, I think that most people are influenced by racism, and that's what we have to address. The problem when it comes to police is they have a lot more power than the average person, so they have to be particularly in tune to any kind of implicit or, God forbid, explicit bias that they might have. So the idea here is not so much to create a commission that will punish police. The idea here, in my ideal world, would be for the police to embrace this kind of oversight so that when there is a complaint, people feel comfortable going to the commission, saying, this is my complaint, and the police will be involved. They'll talk about what happened. All sides will be discussed. All sides will have a chance to make their point, and then it will go on from there. So rather than, a very wise person said to me a couple weeks ago, you can't just pass rules and expect everybody to follow them. You have to get people to embrace change. And this is a huge change. The idea that we're going to admit and address implicit bias or explicit bias and actually do something about is scary for a lot of people, but it has to happen. So I'm hoping that staff and the police and the community can all work together to make this successful, rather than just creating this commission and thinking of it as a way to police the police. Okay, so that's my pitch. I assume that people have comments. Who would like to start? Actually, why don't we go ahead and
public hearing? Yeah.
Yeah. Before we actually discuss it, it is a public hearing. So, and since I am the only staff person, let's do comments from the public next. So, Ms. Bartel.
Thank you, Mayor. The first caller is a phone number ending in 753.
Actually, why don't we go ahead and Yeah. Before we actually discuss it, it is a public hearing. So, and since I am the only staff person,
It seems that he is,
comments from the public.
or she is on a delay.
So, that's okay.
So I'm just going to mute the caller for a moment. If the caller ending in 753 could please turn down the volume on whatever device they're watching the meeting on. If you could turn that volume off, and then I'll unmute you again, and you can comment if you would like, or if you do not want to, you may indicate so by saying pass. Okay, again, so this is caller 753.
Hello?
Hi there.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi. Yes, my name is Edmund Rushton. I've been kind of following this case for, well, ever since about the 23rd of December, in terms of the increased attention that's been paid to the conduct of our police force. And you were discussing earlier who has the power to fire police officers. Could you very quickly just be more clear on exactly who it would be to? Is it the city manager, and you can ask the city manager?
Mayor,
hello?
Ruth, you just muted yourself.
Sorry, you may not have been on earlier when I explained how we're going to do this. You go ahead and ask your question, because you have a total of 5 minutes. So you ask your question, and I will write it down, and then I'll answer it at the end. So don't think I'm ignoring you. I'm just writing it down.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Yep.
So did you get all of that question, or should I restart?
Please restart.
Okay. So earlier we were discussing the power of who gets to fire the police. I know the city council has been under an increased amount of pressure to do something about that. There was a petition that went around that's now got hundreds of signatures to fire Officer Stevenson. And I was just hoping you could be a bit more clear about who exactly is in charge of firing the police officer. So I suppose my question is, in order to fire a police officer, would you all as a city council have to vote on it and ask the city manager?
No.
Is that your only question?
I have one follow-up.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, my follow-up is I was disappointed that I found out when I was first listening to the beginning of this meeting that the incident that went down in Minneapolis last night was not mentioned because there have been very similar images to come out of Minneapolis to the images that came out of East Lansing due to the release of Officer Stevenson's body camera footage during his arrest of Tito. I think that there should be a discussion tonight about disciplining the officers who were responsible for Anthony Loggins' injuries and who were responsible for putting their knee on Anthony Loggins' back, even though the report says that the knee was on his neck, even though the report said that his knee was on his upper back. So there are inconsistencies here, and there is a man dead in Minneapolis right now because a police officer used on that innocent man the same hold that Officer Stevenson used on Anthony Loggins, and I think that needs to be addressed because those 4 officers in Minneapolis who were responsible have already been fired. That's my question.
Thank you. And I'm glad you brought up the Minneapolis case just during this question because it applies to the firing part. So in Minneapolis, the mayor there is no council manager form of government. The mayor is the CEO and the CFO of the city. They have a council, but the mayor is the one that makes those decisions, sort of just like the mayor in Lansing. So in our case, to fire a police officer, I think this is right. And Mr. Lohannes, you can interrupt me if this is incorrect, but I do believe, actually, why don't you just answer that, George? I don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah, so our labor agreements, like most labor agreements involving public safety and most public employees, have progressive discipline, and it's laid out in contractual procedures how a termination of an employee, discipline, suspension, any of those steps take place. There's an investigation. Then there's a process whereby the investigation is provided to the employee and their union rep, and then they have a chance to offer information on their behalf, so kind of their due process. And then at that point, the employer could make an employment decision, either some sort of discipline, a written warning, a verbal warning, suspension, or termination. And of course, progressive discipline means you use the earlier steps in order to progress to more serious steps to correct behavior. So essentially, that's how discipline works. Obviously, in this situation, we asked the state police to perform an investigation for us. And we know at this point, the results of that investigation, they found no misconduct. So that's the reason that no action was taken in this instance, except for, as we noted, retraining and also changing our procedures in terms of the physical use of how we arrest somebody if they resist and what that actually looks like. So those issues will be issues for training issues to make certain that our employees understand how to use techniques more safely so that they don't result in these injuries. Then if you retrain people on that, and then if injuries resulted or they did things outside their training, they could be subject to discipline up to including discharge of employment for that. So they have a due process right as well.
So just to make sure that we answer the question, then you would be the person that would do that, not the chief, right?
Yeah. So the chief would make a recommendation to me, but I'm the chief personnel officer by city charter.
Okay, that's what I thought. So that's your answer to that. And then the second question you had was, can the council vote to tell the city manager to fire somebody? So the council can vote on almost anything. Mr. Meadows.
Why don't we just refer this individual to section 7.1E of the city charter. It says, except as otherwise required in subsection 7.1A, neither the council nor any of its members or committees shall in any manner interfere with the city manager in the exercise of his or her judgment in the appointment or assignment of administrative officers and employees in the administrative service. Neither the council nor any member thereof shall give orders to any of the subordinates of the city manager. So we're prohibited by charter from ordering George to fire somebody or hire somebody for that matter. And, but that doesn't mean we can't interact with George over the decision that he might be making if he chooses to.
Could you vote to recommend?
We could vote to do anything. We can't vote to tell George to do something, but we could vote to recommend. We could vote to say we're disgusted. We could vote to say we're happy. We can make any motion that we want.
And were you perfectly aware of this being the process to fire a police officer? Because when I asked you, it didn't sound like you had a very clear idea on what was required.
No,
and this
I
is
did
a test that's been demanded of you by hundreds of people.
Right. I wouldn't say hundreds, but that as it may, I was aware. I wanted to make sure I got the labor discussion right, which is why I asked Mr. Lahanas. Yes, I was aware. I don't know if you're aware in this case, what was demanded and what we thought was reasonable to do was to immediately, when we found out that there were 2 instances of the same hold resulting in an injury, to have it investigated criminally, which is what we did. And we sent it to the state police for criminal investigation. And the state police, rightly or wrongly, or whether you think it's reasonable or I think it's reasonable, said that this particular—
Can you say if it's rightly or wrongly?
Can I finish, please? That this particular hold and this particular behavior in both of these circumstances were within the bounds of police behavior. And no, I don't think that it's right. I think that hold is dangerous and that the officers should not use it any longer. But you can't really say, all right, we're going to investigate this to see if you broke any laws, and then have the verdict come back that you didn't break any laws, and then demand that there be some kind of extreme penalty for the police officer, because you just can't do that, especially with a union contract. Once you're exonerated, that goes away unless you do something else.
So you can't say if it's right or wrong if a man used a hold that has been known to kill people on a citizen who only resisted by sitting down inside of his car.
No, I'm sorry.
It's a difference between murder and attempted murder.
I don't know if your sound is working. I said that I do not think that it's okay. I personally do not. I'm sorry if you didn't hear that.
Yes, I'm sorry. The sound on my end must have been a little choppy, but I appreciate your taking my call.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Ms. Bartel.
Thank you. The next caller is phone number ending in 314. Caller 314, if you have further comments for council, you may address them. Okay, I am hearing none. The next caller on the list are ending in 333.
Hello, this is Chris Root. I'm at 729 Sunset Lane. Thanks for taking my call. My message tonight is that now is the time for East Lansing to get about the business of designing and establishing an independent police oversight commission. There are residents in East Lansing who've been talking about the need for such a commission for at least 4 years. The Human Relations Commission has been discussing it for at least 2 years, and the council first looked at an ordinance about this 1 year ago. I believe the best way to move forward is to appoint an ad hoc committee that has only one task. The mission needs to be single and clear so that community members can make an informed decision about whether to apply, and so the committee will be able to get right to work. Several members of council have told me privately that they're concerned that this committee will make recommendations that the council won't be able to adopt. I've heard concerns that the committee will recommend things that the city is prohibited from doing, either because of collective bargaining agreements with police unions or because of state or federal laws or city ordinances. I've also heard from some very committed people in the community that it's not worth the time and effort to design a police oversight commission. Why? Because of these very same state laws and union contracts. There are more than 140 independent oversight agencies in cities across the country. All of them operate within legal and collective bargaining constraints. Members of the ad hoc committee won't miss this fact. People in a lot of other cities, frankly, have been frustrated by limits within which these commissions must operate. Nevertheless, there are people trying to make them as effective as possible. Indeed, the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, or NACOL, has this as its mission, which reads in part, to make local law enforcement agencies more transparent, accountable, and responsive to the communities they serve. I think these goals are worth an effort by a study committee to develop recommendations and by the council to consider the recommendations it will receive. You will be asking the study commission to design an independent oversight commission. To do this, the committee itself also needs to have independence from the City Council, the East Lansing Police Department, and their respective attorneys. I'm sure the committee will need to consult with the East Lansing Police Department and to communicate closely with Council, I hope through a liaison. It will also need to consult legal counsel. If you want serious creative work from this committee, you're going to need to give them the space to do it. If your actions convey that you don't trust them, you certainly won't get the best work from them that they can produce. When they have finished, their recommendations will come to you for council's consideration. I was glad to hear all 5 council members say at your May 12 meeting that you do not intend that adopting this resolution will delay your taking up other important issues about policing in East Lansing. There are many residents who strongly believe this work needs to happen without delay. Indeed, there is a lot of work to be done. Just last night, as has been discussed, yet another Black man was killed by a police officer, this time in Minneapolis. The headline from CBS reads, "Man dies after Minneapolis police officer pins him to the ground by his neck." The man's name is George Floyd. May he rest in power. A police officer with a knee on a Black man's neck, even after he has been handcuffed. We saw that on body cam footage in East Lansing that was released only a few weeks ago. That time the action was not lethal, but it was deeply troubling. Yes, there is a lot of work to be done. So I hope you will pass a specific resolution tonight so you can appoint a group to get right to work designing an independent police oversight commission. Let's also work on other issues that various council members and people in the community have raised, such as reducing the use of force by police officers, de-escalating conflicts that lead to arrests with multiple added-on charges, reducing arrests on unnecessary disorderly conduct charges, reducing racial disparity in police-initiated stops, and increasing transparency about law enforcement in our city. Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens, did you have a comment?
I did have a comment based on that. Is that okay? Okay. Chris, I appreciate you calling in. I appreciate everything that you said. I had very similar thoughts to many of the things that you just went through. I think, honestly, one of the biggest issues that we face is over-criminalization of what are minor things. And, you know, bias is something that we can't eliminate overnight, but policies and procedures that lead to unnecessary arrests are things that we can look at. And I think it's honestly one of the biggest issues. And I had very similar thoughts watching the clips from Minneapolis. I think that somebody mentioned it in the comments before, but those officers were terminated, and all 4 of them were terminated after the occurrence. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. But.
Thank you. Ms. Bartel?
Thank you. The next caller on the list is a phone number ending in 552. You may now address council. Again, this is a caller with the phone number ending in 552. You may now address council. Okay, hearing none. The next caller is a phone number ending in 60.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Farhan Sheikh Umar, and I want to thank you for picking up my call. You know, I've been sitting over here and just listening to all of you guys, and what I'm hearing is, you know, this screams gross incompetence. And this committee that's being created tonight is not a committee that's by the people and for the people. You know, this is a committee that's being created by the city council, by elected officials, and it's for city council, members. This system is not going to work simply because there are a lot of questions that have not been answered. Questions like, will there be changes? Is what we saw normal for the East Lansing Police Department? How will this be prevented from happening again? What will you do if Stevenson is involved in another excessive force incident? Why are police officers more concerned about their personal safety than the safety of the public? These are questions that need to be answered before a committee can just be formed. You cannot just form a committee without answering these questions. You know, for many years, the city of East Lansing have ignored our calls. We have showed up to city council meetings. We have organized protests. We have filed complaints with the police department. Not one of them have been sustained. This system has failed us. You know, Mayor, you're not the first mayor of East Lansing, and you're not the last mayor of East Lansing. This has been going on way before you, and it will continue to go on. The thing is, George, let's talk about George. What happened in Minneapolis? George is already on the ground, but the police officer continues to put pressure into George's neck. The same thing that happened with Mr. Gacido, the same thing that happened to Mr. Anthony. It's a similar move that Stevenson does to Black people. Now, I have a quick question for the city manager. Please make it quick. How long has Officer Stevenson been a police officer in East Lansing?
So when you're finished with your comments, I will ask Mr. Lahannis to answer that question, but we want to make sure you have your full 5 minutes. So do you want to? Okay. Yep.
Okay. And the thing is, East Lansing is a city that is majority white. It's a city that has students. It's a city where a lot of the students over there drink, party, and I am sure Officer Stevenson has met many white students or white men that have been disorderly conduct. I am sure he has met a lot of white men that resisted arrest from him. Why is it that we have never heard a case where Officer Stevenson has used this move against a white person? Why is it that that move is only done to a Black person? Has anyone ever thought of that? Have you guys thought of that? Why this man continues to use this move on Black people? It can't be a department policy because not every officer is using it. Not every single officer uses that move. So why is it just Stevenson that's doing that? George begs him. He's pleading for air, but the cop slowly kills him. He's literally asking that police officer, "Sir, I can't breathe. Sir, I can't breathe. Please, I can't breathe." The same thing that Mr. Gacido was saying, my eye, my eye, my eye, my eye. Most of these officers have failed to readjust their restraint. This city dodged a bullet. This city dodged a bullet. We saw what happened in Minneapolis. It could have happened here in East Lansing. that move, that move is not safe. It's not safe for anyone. You know, these officers, they're sworn to protect the community, not harm it or kill it. You know, whether it's Anthony Casito or the countless minorities who have filed a complaint against Officer Stevenson, this will continue to happen until we all speak out and hold our officers to a higher standard. You know, of course, the Michigan State Police exonerating him, but are you telling me that this man did not violate professional conduct? Is there unprofessional conduct? Is there a de-escalation policy in place for you guys? You mean to tell me that every policy that the East Lansing Police Department has in place was met that night by Officer Stevenson in both incidents? And Mayor, you said that once you found out about the Anthony case, and then you guys submitted to the Michigan State Police for a review. The thing is, the Anthony case happened in December. We didn't find out anything about the Mr. Anthony case. We found out that case after Mr. Gasito's case was presented to us and they exonerated Officer Stevenson. That's when they said, oh, wait a minute, there's another case we want to tell you guys about that involves the same officer and another black man. So you guys were not being proactive.
You
That's
have
not what
30
proactive
seconds
means.
remaining.
What?
You have 30 seconds remaining for your comments.
Okay, so the fact of the matter is, I have no faith in this oversight committee that's being put together within weeks. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. And until we put this fire out, until we hold Officer Stevenson accountable, this oversight committee is not going to be enough. And if that's what you guys think, it's a way for you guys to run on this for re-election or whatever the case may be. I'm just letting you guys know that it's not going to work and it's not going to be good enough for the African-American community. Thank you.
Thank you. Hang on a second, Councilmember Stevens. Mr. Lahanas, can you answer the question, how long Mr. Stevens has been an officer, or do you know?
About 10 years.
Thank you.
About 10 years. So can I get a follow-up question?
Yes.
Okay, so he has been on the force for 10 years. Now, how many cases have we heard that involved Officer Stevenson doing this same move on a white person?
So I don't think that Mr. Lahanas can answer that right now, but we will look for that. I don't know that we will find anything unless a complaint has been made. But I caution you, just because we don't know or you don't know if this has happened on a white person, it is incorrect and inappropriate to jump to the conclusion that it never has. Just because I don't know something doesn't mean it's true. So, I mean, I agree that the hold itself should not be used again. And we are instructing the city manager has instructed the chief. Actually, the chief told the city manager that he is going to retrain everybody to not use that method because that method is dangerous. And I can answer one other question that you had about the timing of the two complaints. So I think that you were here that you were at the first meeting when we talked about the Gastito case. And I was under the impression that this had never happened with Officer Stevens before because I specifically asked that question of the then chief. And I was told, no, there has been no other complaint against Mr. Stevenson. And then a few days later, I found out that wasn't the case. And it was a mistake that the chief made. It wasn't an intentional thing. It was a complaint that was filed under a different officer's name because Stevenson was not the main officer. And then as soon as it came to his attention, he called me and I said, well, this is a little too late. I'm very disappointed, etc. So that's when we sent the both cases to be investigated. It wasn't that we weren't talking about the first case, but council, and I can speak for everybody on council, did not know about the first case. Councilmember Stevens. Yeah, that.
Can I?
So, yes, go ahead.
Just a quick thing.
Sure.
You said that the chief didn't know about Officer Stevenson being involved in another incident. The thing is, based on what he said, the chief the complaint comes to him, he looks at it, he assigns that complaint to a captain, which the captain investigates. So you're telling me that the chief and the captain could not make the connection that Officer Stevenson was involved in 2 cases? I mean, this is an incident that happened in December. Come on, stop making excuses, Mayor.
I am telling you that. That's what I was told. That chief is no longer here. Councilmember Stevens.
So I had a couple of things. So one, thank you for calling in. So I have a question maybe for the city manager, and then if the deputy chief is on, I think at some point, maybe this is a question for him, but if the city manager can answer, that is fine as well. So this technique was going to be phased out through training. Is there any reason why we can't just we can advise officers now, right now, not to use that technique at all?
Yeah, so my understanding is they've already been directed to not use it. It will be formally introduced into the training, but I can have Deputy Chief Gonzalez speak to the issue of the head control and also the issue of placement of the knee that high on the body and the concern about that, and also what they're supposed to do when someone is cuffed in terms of getting back up off the person.
That's
Deputy
fine.
Chief Gonzalez.
Oh,
do you want to speak now?
No, that's fine. I just want to reiterate that I don't want to have to wait for a training to not see that ever
Oh
again.
no, they've been directed. They've been directed about that already. That direction has already happened. So,
okay.
But I can ask the chief to answer if you want him to answer that.
No, that's fine. My second comment is to something that the member of the public made a little while ago, and it's something that speaks to an amendment that I'm going to be making later to this to remove one council member from being the chair of the committee. I think it's incumbent on all of us on council right now to recognize that even though we might have the best intentions behind pushing things forward, we're not the best people to do that right now, whether we believe it or not. I think that whether it's the fact that a lot of the people in the public have a mistrust right now, whether unfounded or founded, it's important that we recognize that, step aside, and let community members take that action. So I agree with the caller, and I think that if that amendment later on, and I made it before and it didn't pass, but I'll be making it again tonight. If that amendment doesn't pass, then I don't necessarily disagree with some of the members of the public saying that this committee might be biased. So that's my second comment. Thanks. Mayor Byer, you're muted.
Mayor, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Any more questions for Mr. Omar? Okay, thank you for calling in, Ms. Bartel.
Thank you. And the next caller on the list is a phone number ending in 432.
Hi, thank you. Chuck Grigsby. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for taking my call. Thank you for, finally getting to the point of where we're at, where you will be making decisions that benefit the community and specifically people of color in the community overall. I want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Aaron Stevens. I gave him a call today. I was pretty charged up, and I just want to say thank you for listening to me and hearing me out. This is a very important issue to me and to a lot of other people that feel like this has been long overdue when it comes to things actually really happening in the community where they see change. You think about this, we've talked about trust a little bit. This is a trust issue for the community and policing. It's also a people issue, it's a community issue, and it's a leadership issue. And I really want to believe in this commission, this ad hoc commission that's going to be created, another commission, that the advisory information that they are able to obtain, secure, and present to the council that will be in play, that you really come together as a whole, as a council. I know that on this issue, there's a lot of different opinions, a lot of different beliefs in how to go about fixing issues. But when you have something like this magnitude, I think Mayor Ruth Byer talked about, has something that's very, very important. I really hope and beg for you, and I mean that word, beg for you to really put the egos away, put the prior assumptions away, the biases away, and just listen to what these people have been working on for a long period of time. It's a history-making changing event. I think Councilmember Babcock talked about the history. When you think about policing and overall, it didn't come from a very positive place when it comes to people of color. If you do your homework, and you'll find that out. That's a fact. And we are here now in 2020 with the opportunity to really change that narrative. This is not such a big issue that we can't do anything about it. This is an issue that's been going on for a long period of time, but it's not an issue that we are just helpless in. It's going to take a long time to do this, a long time to do that. That's not necessarily the case. There's very factual evidence right now that you have been presented to from the community that you could really start using your influence and work with the city manager and get him to really understand what your people are saying in your community about how this is affecting them. He has the power to be able to just have policy be changed in a way that's positive. If you're not able to fire anyone, if you're not able to hire anyone, except for the city manager and the city attorney, then you need to please work with that person or persons much more closer, more effectively than we've seen from a community's perspective in a way where you're going to get some results. I think Acting Deputy Chief Gonzalez is on the line, and you guys are talking about retraining officers not to use a hold. When you think about the hold, when you think about the physical contact that person is receiving, it's the intent behind the hold that is really concerning to me. It's really concerning to me, as Mayor Pro Tem Aaron Stevens talked about, that you go from nonviolent infractions to violent outcomes. And it's very clear that this is a biased situation where it's affecting a minority subgroup of people in your community. So it's more than just a retraining. It's more than just showing someone a different way to subdue someone. It's really a philosophy and a belief in how you go about your job as a police officer in the city, as you go about your job as a police officer in this nation. So I think we, again, as I said before, you have an opportunity to really set the tone nationally for everyone else and be a template for a great opportunity to be better than what we had before in the past.
You have 30 seconds left.
I just, there's, and I want to be respectful as possible, but this is not a labor issue. This is not just something that MSU State Police got a chance to review and then now we can't do anything about it. And it just is what it is. If I'm driving my car right now to go to the grocery store to grab something for my family to eat, and I happen to get pulled over by Officer Stevenson, do you think I trust that interaction? Do you think I believe that I'm safe? Do you think I feel that I'm in a situation where he has my best interest at heart? That's a question to me now, based on actions, based on facts. So I just want you guys to just marinate on that for a second. I do a lot of things in this community when no one's looking on the behalf of this community. And I shouldn't have to feel threatened just going outside my door and driving to the store. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And thank you for your call. And I agree with you that you should not have to feel threatened. That's what's making me so, that's what is making me so passionate about this commission. Ms. Bartel.
Thank you. The next caller on the line is number 963.
Hi, this is Alice Dreger, 621 Sunset Lane. I have a few comments and a few questions. I'll make them as brief as possible. First of all, Mayor Byer just said that she's not sure if we can look up how often Officer Stephen has used a pressure point technique. You can easily look this up. In fact, Eli has been logging use of force as shown in the weekly police reports. The code you're looking for on this one is 8808 PPCT, pressure point control tactic. It's very easy, not for us, but it is very easy for the department to look up the cases in which that has been noted and figure out which officer did that. That would begin to answer your question whether or not this technique is disproportionately used by certain officers. It may also allow you to see the race of the people against whom it has been used. So I think the idea that this would be difficult to look up is not true. It is difficult for the public to look up. It is not difficult for the city of East Lansing to look up. Secondly, there's been a comment made multiple times in this discussion that the police department has told officers to not use this technique anymore. A communication from Steve Gonzalez to me today in reference to my questions about what happened in Minneapolis and what's happening in East Lansing said this, quote, Alice, placement of the knee across a person's upper back shoulder blades is an approved technique through pressure point control techniques training. Having a knee squarely across someone's neck for 7 minutes, as seen in the Minnesota video, is different. Upon conducting our department-wide retraining effort of PPCT use, we will be addressing knee placement as a part of the program. This will include the need to constantly reassess the use of individual techniques as a given situation evolves. That doesn't say to me that it's been ruled out and that it's going to be ruled out. Third, you have said that you can't really tell the city manager what to do or what to tell people below the chain to do, yet you just passed a resolution telling the city manager that you agree that it's a good idea to do what you're talking about in terms of service reductions. So I don't think there's any question that if the city council wanted to, it could pass a resolution absolutely indicating what they believe happened here. And in fact, Mayor Byer said as much. Fourth, I want to know, and I've asked the city manager and not gotten an answer, did the city manager know that his hands would be tied, that the police chief's hands would be tied if the case of Stevenson was referred to the Michigan State Police and the Michigan State Police exonerated the officer? Lahanas's attitude has been that leaves us nothing left to do. Did you know when you sent this on to the Michigan State Police that that was going to tie your hands in terms of the outcome and the conclusion would be there was nothing more to be done? Fifth, I've asked several times now whether or not various people in the city of East Lansing are aware that on Stevenson's body tape in the case of the arrest of Mr. Loggins, when he addresses Officer Austin Nelson the first time, he calls Officer Austin Nelson Anelson. I don't think there's any explanation for that other than that it is a homophobic nickname being used. And I've asked the question repeatedly whether or not there is some other explanation and whether or not there's a personnel complaint lodged about that, because I believe that would count as harassment under the policies of the city of East Lansing and the police department. Sixth, I've asked multiple times and not gotten an answer to what it was that people saw in the Loggins video that caused the referral to the Michigan State Police. I still haven't gotten a clear answer on that. Something triggered a belief that there was potential criminal action, yet we were told there was a complete exoneration. So what is the difference between what Michigan State Police sees as complete exoneration and what somebody in the city of East Lansing saw as potentially criminal on the part of the officer? And finally, I've asked multiple times and not gotten an answer to the question, when the Michigan State Police came back and exonerated Stevenson in the case of the actions in the Gacito case, does that mean that the complaint outcome was changed in the opinion of East Lansing Police Department from not sustained to exonerated? That should be a simple thing to answer, and I can't get an answer to it. We were told on February 27th that the outcome of the investigation by ELPD and the arrest of Mr. Gacito was not sustained with regard to excessive use of force. Michigan State Police found exonerated. Has the indication from ELPD therefore changed on that particular complaint? Thank you.
30. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Ms. Traeger, I can answer a couple of the questions. So in terms of being able to find out if this particular pressure point technique has been used on people of different races, I don't think I can do. I can find PPCT. I may be able to find race, but there are many pressure point tactics. So the one where the knee is on the upper back, or God forbid the neck, I have never seen that in a police report.
There are reports. The reports
I understand.
indicate what happened.
It does indicate that there was a pressure point technique used, but be that as it may, I will go and look. So I thank you for that advice. Secondly, did the city manager know that his hands would be tied if Officer Stevenson was exonerated? I imagine that the city manager understands how that works. I certainly knew that if the next investigation exonerated Mr. Stevenson, we would not have any labor recourse. But I mean, that doesn't mean that it shouldn't have been done. And I can tell you from my perspective, what changed between the Gastito incident, it was investigated and found that it was inconclusive, but there was not enough evidence to move that to a criminal investigation. What happened just a few days after that, which I think I talked about with the last speaker, was that all of council found out, and the chief found out in the sense that there was a second case with the exact same hold. So if there is a pattern that seems excessive to anybody, the chief at the time wanted to have it investigated. So it wasn't so much they saw something in particular, it's that now there were two cases, and that was just a little too much coincidence for, at least for me as mayor. I didn't direct anybody to do anything, but I was very pleased that it was set out for investigation.
Mayor?
And
do you mind
hang
if
on,
I-
I'm almost finished. And then the comment about a homophobic slur, I think that if there were a complaint filed by either the recipient or anybody listening, then that would have been a complaint, but I don't believe that there were any complaints filed. Councilmember
So
Stevens,
my sending 3 messages doesn't matter?
as a complaint, you were making a complaint of a homophobic slur on a FOIA document. Is that what you were doing?
I sent it to you, to Jesse Gregg, to Aaron Stevens, to George Lahanas, and to Steve Gonzalez.
Right, but you didn't. I didn't view it as a complaint. Maybe I misunderstood. I will view it as that at right now, if that's what you intended. I just read it as you were totally disgusted by the comment.
So Mayor, do you want me to address that very
Yes,
briefly?
please.
So this shows up on their screen as A. Nelson. So sometimes they merge it together and call it A. Nelson. Like my name is Glahana. Someone calls me Glahana because my email is G. Lahana.
I think you should watch the
It's
tape.
a stupid thing. It becomes a nickname. And I don't think the department took it as a homophobic thing. I think they took it as someone's running the name together, and his name is A. Nelson. That's what I thought it was, but and there was no complaint as far as I know, but I can ask the deputy chief because he's on the line if there was any complaint about that.
Councilmember Stevens.
I think that we should just not be making assumptions about what's on there, what's not. Let's just watch the tape over. If we can find that instance, I think that does.
I can point you to it. I have, and I will again.
Yep.
I have actually watched it and listened to it myself, Ms. Drager, and I think it's gross, but I don't think the word anal necessarily means homosexuality anyway. I think they were just, if it was going to be a gross thing to say, it was referring to an anus. I don't think it was referring to sexuality. So whether it was a bad nickname or not, it didn't rise to the level of that it rose for you. Would anybody else like to address anything that Ms. Drager brought up? Mr. Meadows.
Just first a question. I think the second incident involving Stevenson, we released the videos on that, right?
Yes.
Right. Well, I think that if anyone looks at that video closely, they'll see a significant difference in the way that pressure point technique was applied to that individual. And that, I believe, is what led us to, or led the department to refer this for criminal prosecution. And just from my own standpoint, exoneration of a criminal activity does not necessarily mean that you are exonerated on all other aspects of how you conducted yourself during a police stop. So I don't think it aces out further action if further action was sought.
Thank you. Councilmember Stevens.
Yeah, so I just wanted to go back to an earlier question that you answered, Mayor. So to my knowledge at this point, I believe you were the only member of council to see the tape before it was sent over to MSP. And as you indicated, you don't have the ability to order that it be sent to MSP because we can't instruct staff to necessarily do that. So who does have the ability to to make that call? Is it the city manager?
It's either the police chief or the city manager. In this case, it was the police chief, I believe.
So if that's the case, then can we have either the city manager or maybe even the deputy chief answer the original question to why was this different and why was this sent over in that fashion? Just because I don't, yeah.
Sure. Mr. Lahanas, do you feel comfortable answering that, or would you like to ask chief?
I think I can answer it, but I'll ask Chief Gonzalez to answer the question. Deputy Chief Gonzalez, are you on the phone?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
So the difference between the two videos, the one in the Loggins case was very clear, as we had fleet cameras or in-car video cameras that captured the scene from an overall perspective. The Gasito case, the one that occurred at 7-Eleven, we were relying on a significant number of body-worn cameras, which some were inconclusive and didn't piece together the entire incident. So when we were able to take a look at the overall case, the overall viewpoint of the Loggins incident, we saw behavior that we wanted to be looked at by the state police to make a determination if a criminal act occurred. Those are the main two differences with each video set.
So what was that action that then instigated you wanting to see if there was criminal conduct?
The action that we saw was, again, from the fleet point of view, the action that we saw was Officer Stevenson, his shoulders made a movement that caused us concern. And we wanted to have that looked at again by investigators from the state police.
Can you go into any more detail without, I don't know if this is too much on a public meeting, but can you go into any more detail than that?
It's hard to explain without actually watching the video with you to show the action or the movement of his shoulders that caused us concern.
Okay.
I can actually speak to that, Mr. Stevens, because that was the thing that I saw too, is when you're looking at, and it's not his camera, it's somebody else's camera, when you're watching Mr. Stevens from behind, his shoulders indicate that he lifted up and then pushed down. And that was the part that the deputy chief thought needed further investigation. And as I said, the fact that there was a second incident period was enough for me. So that's that issue. Mr. Meadows, did you have your hand up?
No, I'll just echo that. That's what I saw as well. And I think it's pretty obvious, actually.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
The chief also mentioned to me, I'd say the chief also mentioned to me at that point that he had some concern about the high level of placement of the knee. So he thought it was a high level of placement that he wasn't satisfied with as well. So it was those things taken together.
And by high, you mean high. By high, you mean high
on the body.
Yeah.
High on the body, close to the neck, high on the shoulder. That was concerning.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments from Ms. Drager? Thank you, Ms. Drager. Ms. Bartel.
Thank you. The next caller on the list is a caller ending in the phone number 971. 971, you may now address council.
I know this person did email us to speak as well.
I'm wondering if the caller may need to unmute their device that they're calling from.
Can you say the number again, Ms. Bartel?
Yes, the phone number is ending in the last 3 digits, 971. They may need to unmute their device. There isn't a button on your phone to do that, perhaps dialing *6.
Well, let's do this, Ms. Bartel. Let's move on. Is there another caller? Oh,
Yeah.
hang on a second. I think she got on, or he got on. Or not. Let's move on to another caller and then come back to this one.
Okay, I can do that. The next caller then is phone number ending in 096.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Hi. I would like to give my 5 minutes to Farhan.
Okay, go ahead. Is he the? Ms. Bartel? Thank you. Can you please go to the next caller? A bomber. I don't know. Ms. Bartel?
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
The next caller is going to be 056. Caller ending in the number 056.
Nicole, can you please explain again how to unmute if there's no mute button?
Yep, if there's no mute button on your phone that you can press, you could try dialing *6 to unmute.
Hi, this is Tyson Sardar. Was it 056 that you opted for?
Yes, we can hear you. If you would like to address council, you may.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Tyson Sardar, and as you may be aware, I serve on the Human Relations Commission. And when I joined the commission in the very first couple of meetings, that's when the reports were being prepared in order to submit it to the city council. And what I saw in my very first two meetings was overwhelming number of citizens who both they showed up commission meetings as well as they wrote letters to the commission, and their overwhelming sentiment was to form a truly independent citizens panel. And in order for such a panel to be formed, they wanted a truly independent committee as well that will recruit such a panel. So the sentiment was clearly opposed to tainting such a commission, a panel, or even the recruiting panel with anybody having to do anything with public safety. So my suggestion or my advice to the city council is to truly take that into consideration and not to overlook the overwhelming sentiment of the people who came to these meetings and offered their input. So as well-intentioned as your desire may be to have the mayor as a member of such a committee, I still think that it would be undemocratic in the sense that it goes against the wishes of the citizens of East Lansing who wanted a truly independent commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the caller? Thank you for calling in. Ms. Bartel?
Yes, thank you. The next caller is phone number ending in 932.
Hello, this is Liz Miller, Human Relations Commission member. I live on Grand River Avenue at the We Can Do Hard Things Together house. And I'm grateful to be engaged in this hard topic with so many people across our community. Thank you, council members, for taking this issue seriously and moving forward tonight. I continue to be concerned about having the mayor named as the chair of the committee. I happen to have really deep respect for our current mayor and appreciate the amount of listening and learning that she's done on this issue in the past few months. And she would make an excellent council liaison to the committee, but the chair should be an independent member of the public. It is painfully ironic to decide that a committee focused on institutional racial bias will be led by a white mayor with maximal institutional power. Ideally, the chair would be named from the citizens who apply for the committee, someone able to take a broader perspective on the issue and provide independent leadership. And I hope that a council member will be named as a liaison to be a partner in the work, and that the independence of the committee will be maintained. I'm also concerned about the stated mission of the committee. I hope it can be focused on forming the eventual commission and not taking evidence or reviewing policy and procedures. A strong, focused mission will allow the committee to move directly into their work and have results in expedient amount of time. Thank you all for listening to all the voices tonight.
Thank you. Any comments for the caller? Thank you for calling in. Ms. Bartel?
Thank you. The next caller is phone number ending in 203. You may now address council. And one more time, this is caller ending in 203. If you would like to try to unmute your device, if that might be the case, there may be an unmute button, or you could try *6. Okay, hearing none. We will go back to caller ending in 971.
And not taking evidence.
We can hear you.
Policy.
So,
A strong focus will allow the
so caller ending in 971, I just temporarily muted you. If you could please turn down the volume on the device you're watching the meeting on, and I will unmute you and you may now address council. Okay, we can hear you now.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Thank you.
Hello?
You're on.
Can you hear me?
Okay,
Yes.
council or phone number that's ending in 971. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Finally. Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Byer and City Council. And thank you especially to Council Members Stevens and Greg. I've been emailing you all night about I can't get on the call. Please help me. And actually, I emailed all of you, but only Stevens and Greg responded.
And Nicole Bartel.
Yes. I just want to applaud and thank you all for considering the important matter of creating an independent police oversight commission for our city. I also want to thank Chris Root for mentioning the name George Floyd. Say his name, George Floyd. May he rest in power. I appreciate that Mayor Byer said at the last May 12th City Council meeting some comments reflecting on the horror and tragedy of the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. She prefaced her comments saying, this wasn't a police matter, a police killing, but there have been numerous police killings of unarmed Blacks. I would use more than 5 minutes of my time if I were to name them all. An abundance of the killings involve a white officer killing or harming a Black person. We cannot deny that racial bias exists in the police forces across this country, and East Lansing is not immune from police brutality against Black and brown residents. The case of East Lansing police officer Andrew Stevenson is a glaring example of why this city needs an independent police oversight commission. There were 5 formal complaints made against this officer. How many people were harmed who didn't file a complaint? This demonstrates a pattern of racial bias. People of color are being targeted. Is Officer Stevenson the only East Lansing officer with racial bias complaints? I initiated an online petition that Officer Stevenson should not be reinstated, and over 400 people have signed it. And after tonight's meeting, I'm going to send it to the deputy chief. At the last city council meeting, George Lahanas said that matter has been decided. And yes, the matter has been decided by the police, but we don't accept that answer. It's not adequate. Just more evidence why we need a independent oversight commission. And I do have a question. Mayor Byer was saying it's not her role to fire any police officers, but I'm wondering whose role, if any, that is. I'm glad the deputy chief is on the call. Time and time again, all across the country and here in East Lansing, we see that when the police investigate their own, we see that it's a system built to protect their own and encourage dishonesty. There's no accountability, and our Black and brown neighbors, family, and friends are left feeling like prey, as evidenced by the caller earlier. I think his name was Charles Grigsby, who talked about what it might be like if he were going to the grocery store and stopped by Officer Stevenson. A young Black friend of mine was telling me that he was jogging with one of his friends, also Black, both MSU students, and they were running near a police incident unfolding in East Lansing. They both knew without even saying it to each other that they had to stop running because they knew how it would appear, two Black men running near the scene of a potential crime. Is this fair? Is this how we want our friends and neighbors to feel in this community? The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Does someone have to die before Officer Stevenson is removed from the East Lansing Police Force? I'd like now to make some comments about the formation of a committee. I'm unclear where all these other functions came from. Pure and simple, the committee's role should be to research and then recommend to the council the parameters of an independent police oversight commission. I think delving into the relationship between the East Lansing community and the police is a distraction and will complicate, delay, and distract from the main issue at hand. As the resolution stands now, I just want to say that Mayor Byer is supposed to be the chair of the committee. This is not independence. The mayor will have an opportunity to weigh in, like all other council members, when the committee's recommendations are made. There is urgency for this independent police oversight commission. We need this, and I urge you to vote for the creation of this committee to explore creating an independent oversight commission. And thank you so much.
Thank you. And I will answer the one question you had. Mr. Lahanas answered it early, but I know you were having trouble getting on. In terms of who can fire a police officer, the police officers are all covered by their contract with the employer. The employer is the city of East Lansing, represented by Mr. Lahanas. So in following the contract, the person who could eventually fire a police officer or immediately fire a police officer, depending on the behavior, would be Mr. Lahanas. Ms. Bartel.
Thank you. The next caller is phone number ending in 616. Caller ending in 616. You may now address council.
Hi.
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Sarah, and I would like to give my 5 minutes to Farhan. If you could unmute his number from your end.
I think you are unmuted because we can hear you.
If there was another...
No, I said I would like to give my 5 minutes to Farhan. He's already on this call. I said if you could unmute him from his end.
What are the last 3 digits of his phone number? Do you know?
Yes, 660.
Thank you. Can you do that, Ms. Bartel?
Yes, this was a caller who had previously spoken.
Oh, then hang on one second. Mr. Yaden, callers are given 5 minutes. Would this be outside of that 5 minutes, or is this allowable?
Sorry, Mayor. The resolution that was adopted didn't speak to this, but a general understanding of a limitation is that it's limited to that person. So it's person to person, and you can't give your time to someone else. So once a person has used up their 5 minutes, that is the end of their time.
Thank you. Ms. Bartel, is there anybody else?
There are no other callers on the list. There was
We,
one comment, Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Councilmember Stevens.
number ending in 552, I do not believe is given a chance to speak. But
Do you see a 552, Ms. Bartel?
Yes, I just allowed them to talk. This was someone that was called on previously. Perhaps they had difficulty connecting before, but you may address council now.
Thank you.
Just one more time, this is number ending in 552 in case you had any comments for council.
Can you explain the unmuting again, Ms. Bartel?
Yes, so there may be a mute or unmute button on your phone. If you're using a phone or device, you may also dial *6.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay. Hi, this is Kath Etzel, 1026 Daisy Lane. I basically, we've listened to an entire list of individuals who have worked very hard on policing issues in one matter or another. Anna Fisher, Rave Lassen, from the past meeting, Liz Miller, Chuck Grisby, Chris Ruth, Bethan Sadar, Farhan Omar, Alice Drager. I hope I haven't missed anyone there. I think there is a fairly significant agreement that the resolution as written is too broad. It needs to be more narrow, and that we need to see independence in the chair role of this for it to be legitimized. I am in agreement that this is a very teeny tiny step. This could turn out to just simply be a feel-good step, or it could turn out to be part of a game-changing movement. The city council says they do not hire and fire other than the city manager and the city attorney. As a school board member, I have a similar role as we hire and fire the superintendent, but we do also set goals for our superintendent, and we do make it clear what their role is and what the goals are for the school district as they move forward based on a seven-member board. And so while I can understand that you cannot directly hire or fire a police officer, I think it's not legitimate to say that you can't have a role in making absolutely certain that a police officer like Stevenson and other police officers in the department can continue to be employed in this department. Part of my concern about the mission statement being too involved and too long is there are things that need to get taken care of long before this committee or this commission is resolved. One of them are union contracts coming up in the near future and negotiations for that. And I think that some of these things like discipline need to be addressed in those. It is unacceptable that a police officer has injured two people's faces using a hold that should not cause injury to their head and face, and yet it has happened. And the shoulder movement that's described, I'm sure, was very clear. What Gastito was saying is that his head was smashed back and forth into the pavement. I'm a veterinarian. Most of you know that. I have restrained Great Danes all the way down to Chihuahuas. I have been taught all sorts of restraint techniques, and I know full well that there are ways to do them appropriately to restrain an animal, and there are ways that you could do a hold to cause significant injury to an animal because you're frustrated, you're angry, or whatever else. I'm not saying that people do that. I just know that it very easily could be done. And the same is true in this situation. I have no doubt in my mind that Officer Stevenson had problems with the lack of respect or whatever he was feeling and took it out on these two individuals. I also have a problem with Captain Connolly standing before the community and saying that he was, I can't drop the wording right now, but acting as if he personally did not know, as one of 5 shift commanders, that he did not know that Stevenson had done the same technique on another man 2-3 weeks earlier, speaking of Austin Loggins. My last comment is my understanding that with Mr. Loggins, the incident originated with him exiting a gas station and not using his indicator light. This is where the problem starts. I would ask every member of council there how many times you have exited a gas station and not used your indicator light, and how many of those times were you pulled over by a police officer. This is where racial profiling starts. We can get into how his license was not, suspended, and come up with all sorts of reasons, like we are now seeing that Ahmaud Arbery, was previously tased, and come up with all sorts of reasons to, after the fact, justify the brutality. But not using an indicator light to leave a gas station, which is something that I couldn't even count the number of times I've done and never been pulled over.
You have 30
And
seconds
yet
remaining.
this black man was. What's that?
You have 30 seconds remaining. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, I have a really big problem. I have not looked at the footage of Loggins' arrest at this point in time. At some point, it becomes pretty PTSD, especially having watched my own son be thrown down over a police car and several of my other children being manhandled by police. But I have significant concerns if, in fact, this police officer used a term anal son for another police officer. And personally, yes, I do believe that's homophobic, if that is, in fact, the term that he used. And even if it wasn't, I do not know a place of employment in this country where it would be appropriate to call a coworker anal. So that is
Mayor Byer, that's the
harassment,
5
whether
minutes.
or not the police officer has filed a complaint. That is inappropriate in a place of employment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Edsel. Are there any other calls? Ms. Bartel?
There are no other callers at this time.
I will close the public hearing and bring the item back to council. To get the item on the floor, I move approval of the resolution described under 4.1, a resolution to establish a police community relations review committee. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Stevens. I would like to speak to my motion before we open it up for amendments. So there's been a lot of talk about whether I or the mayor, whoever the mayor is, or a councilperson should be the chair of the committee. And I just want to make my case. I want people to think about the fact that this committee is not an independent commission. This committee is figuring out how best to create an independent commission. And to say that the committee should be independent because the commission has to be independent is just a non sequitur. There's no relation between the two. And I believe that as the elected leader of the city, as the mayor of the city elected by the people, the mayor should be at least the chair of the group that develops how best to implement an independent commission. A Black man or a Black woman was not elected mayor. I was elected mayor. I take this charge seriously. I take my leadership role seriously, and I think that this is a place that it should that I should be leading. That said, if a majority of council disagrees with that, then we can amend that part of the resolution. And that's all I had. Councilmember Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor Byer. I do have an amendment, and I'll speak to the amendment when I get there. I will make a motion to amend under the section, therefore be resolved. The City Council of the City of East Lansing hereby establishes a Police Relations Review Committee comprised of 11 members appointed by the mayor, subject to approval by the City Council as follows. To strike the text under number 7, which reads currently the mayor who shall chair the committee, semicolon, to change that to a council member to serve as liaison to the committee, semicolon.
I'll second that.
Okay. So I made a similar amendment the last council meeting that we discussed this, where that did not pass. I was informed that the term non-voting might have been an issue with some folks. I'm happy to amend that. I think we all know what a liaison is. It is a non-voting member, but it is somebody that is willing to participate, be in the know, relay information back to council, be an advocate for the committee, and be involved in the process. I do believe that, and this does not speak to the mayor's leadership qualities at all. I voted for this mayor to be in the position that she's in because I do have great respect for her. However, I believe that right now we're in a state where people think that we as a city council, whether or not this is true, might not have the best intentions behind running something like this. The community wants to be involved. I brought this issue, a police oversight committee actually up probably a year and a half ago now. And one of the things that we heard was that we really wanted community driven. We wanted community focused. We had several very long HRC meetings last summer involving, we want a longer process with a lot of community input. And I do understand the concerns of people that are saying if it is shared by a member of the city council, then it will be written by a member of the city council, and that there will be bias with it. So I'll make that amendment again. I hope that this passes this time. If not only voting for this because you believe the reasons that I said, maybe vote for it just because if it legitimizes this committee in other ways within the community, then that's a win as well. Because that's what we're doing, is we're rebuilding trust. And I think that's important. So that's my pitch for the amendment. I hope you will support.
I just have one question, Mr. Stevens. When you say bias, what do you mean?
I mean that we're all biased, and we as elected officials, as people that are overseeing the city in a city manager form of government, so a step away, do have inherent bias that we're going to bring to the table to this. And the truth is that what we want to see is experts. We want to see people that are affected by this and people that are willing to give us, at the end of the day, who, by the way, have the end decision on what we implement, what their view, the community's view of a best possible solution is. And so I don't want to tamper with that until we get to the council table, and then we can have our say. But allowing that commission the freedom to do that without maybe holding their tongues because a city council member is the chair is something that's important, I think.
Anybody else? Councilmember Meadows.
Yeah, I stated my reasons for supporting the idea of the mayor being chair of this commission, committee, study group, whatever we end up calling it last time. But I would just want to reiterate that I believe that this particular part of this process, and it is just the first part of this process, is an activity of the council to put before the public a proposed commission that will provide oversight to our police department. And I think because it is a council activity, it is appropriate for the mayor to be the chair of the group that does the research and brings back a proposal to not only the city council, but to the community as to how this will function going forward with an independent commission that will provide appropriate oversight for complaints against police officers, not just complaints involving some of the activities we've already talked about tonight, but complaints period going forward into the future. So I think it's very important that we have a strong leader on that commission. And that's not to say that if we went in another direction, we wouldn't end up that way. But when you have a group of people that are sort of thrown together, you don't always get the appropriate leadership. This is a way for us to make sure that we have appropriate leadership someone who's experienced as a leader and as leading not just the city council, but leading the city as a whole. Her responsibility is not just to us, it is to every citizen in this community. So when you talk about bias, I think the reality is, if anybody has watched the mayor over the last few months, her bias will be to make sure this happens the right way and that the result is appropriate for our community. So I don't have a particular problem with it, and I'll be voting against the motion. But if we decide that we're going in another direction, then we'll look at how we can construct that to make sure that we have the strongest possible approach to creating this commission in the future. You're muted.
You're muted.
Gotcha. Councilmember Gregg and then Councilmember Stevens.
Hey, so Mark's point that this is a council-driven activity, I think that the way that it is written right now, it is a council-driven activity, but I actually don't think that's an appropriate place for council to be enacting in this. We create laws for the city of East Lansing, and then the police enforce those laws. So each member of this body is invested in the police department in a way that makes us ineffective to serve on that committee. We rely on them to be our enforcers, and what the community is telling us right now is that the way that these laws are being enforced is inappropriate. So we need to step back from this. We need to hear the voices of the community members that are impacted by those decisions, and we need to do that with some level of humility. I think that means selecting a chair for that committee that is not the head of our city government. Council is one hand and the police are another hand, and this needs to be taken out of our hands. There are definitely things that we can work on that are appropriate to be driven from a council level. I hope that we are willing to dig in and do that work. But I think that this is our opportunity to empower a group of engaged citizens to work on a project that is not appropriate for us to work on. So although I have great respect for you, Ruth, and I enjoy working with you, I do not think that this is a place where you are going to be the most effective person. So I will be voting yes on Aaron's amendment.
Ruth, you're muted again, sorry.
I know. Just calm down. Councilmember Stevens.
Just to make a response to one thing that Councilmember Meadows said, I have no disagreements with your accolades of the mayor on her leadership qualities, but one thing that you said, I think encapsulates really why I'm making this amendment. You said the bias comes in only because she would want it to be done in the right way. And I think that we need to recognize that our right way might not actually be the right way. Wanting to work with the community means that we need to be willing to admit that. We need to be willing to listen. And that's the point of this, is if we already had the right way, we would be passing a actual independent police oversight commission, but we know that we need more input. We know that we need more guidance. And I think allowing a commission to do that freely is the way to go about it. So
thank you. Any other, Mr. Meadows?
Just one quick comment. We're the legislative arm of the city, not the executive arm. So just in response to Councilmember Gregg's comment, say that we don't have a relationship with the police department like the executive branch does. So the chief administrator of the city, the city manager, and all of the department executives all do have a relationship, because that is part of that branch of our city government. This is a legislative action, and that's why I think that a legislative leader, the mayor, should actually be heading this action as we go forward.
And just to piggyback on that, that's what I was trying to say, is that I have been asked to lead. I have been elected to lead. The way that you were talking about it, Stevens, I fully admit that I'm sure I have implicit bias. I work very hard on it, and I definitely don't think that it's not significant. It's significant for every person with privilege, which clearly I have. But the implication that therefore there should not be any white people on this ad hoc committee. So I know that you didn't say that, Mr. Stevens, but if you leave it like this, it could well be that they will elect a white person. So that's why I asked you about bias. If you meant bias in the sense that I would be bringing the city's bias.
Yeah.
If that's what you meant, that's why I asked you to explain.
Yeah, let me clarify as clear as possible. I mean bias as a member of the city council.
Okay, that's fine. And I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, the city council that a lot of people are angry
not
at right
trusting
now.
right now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I understand your point. In terms of building trust with people who think that the city council has let them down, I agree with you, but I don't think that overrides the necessity of me as the mayor to try and fix a huge problem that we have.
And that's why we can disagree and still be friends.
That's right. All right. Anybody else? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll on this question, which is Mr. Stevens' amendment?
Councilmember Babcock,
You're muted, Lisa.
Sorry, the much better half was running around the house. Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
No. The amendment is adopted. Are there other amendments?
I have an amendment.
Councilmember Meadows, and I saw you, Councilmember Gregg. So Councilmember Meadows.
And I know Jesse has a lot more than I do, but I want to make a motion to amend the mission paragraph, which currently reads, be it further resolved, the mission of the committee shall be to take testimony, review evidence, etc. And I just want to mention that when this refers to taking testimony, anytime anybody appears in front of us or talks to us on the phone or does anything like that, that's testimony that we should be considering and making our decisions. And that's what I meant by that. But I would propose that that paragraph be replaced with the following. Be it further resolved, the mission of the committee shall be to take testimony, review evidence, and examine the methods by which other communities review complaints of police misconduct, with a special emphasis on racial and ethnic injustice, to review best practices based on national standards, and to propose to the City Council a framework for a police oversight commission in East Lansing.
I'll second that.
Mark, will you read that one more time? Because I have an amendment for the same paragraph and I'm trying to decide if yours means the same thing as mine.
Sure, I'll read it again. Be it further resolved, the mission of the committee shall be to take testimony, review evidence, and examine the methods by which other communities review complaints of police misconduct, with a special emphasis on racial and ethnic injustice, to review best practices based on national standards, and to propose to City Council a framework for a police oversight commission in East Lansing.
And I seconded that. Mr. Meadows, would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, I think we heard a number of comments that the objectives of the commission were too broad. And I think this narrows it down. This is clearly take all the evidence that is necessary, including a review of other communities, including national standards, and make a recommendation to us of something that is the East Lansing, the appropriate thing for East Lansing as an oversight commission. And that's the whole objective of it. I think it responds to Rafe Lassen's comments and other comments that we've received about the broadness of the charge to this committee.
Any questions for Mr. Meadows? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll on Mr. Meadows' amendment?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes. Councilmember Gregg, you had another amendment?
Oh, I have so many.
Okay. All right.
Some of my stuff is just cleaning up some language, and I think that maybe is not important right now. I prefer the phrase review board to oversight committee. I prefer the phrase study group to committee. So a lot of these are just kind of cleaning up that language in there.
But either way, do you want to go ahead and make those two as formal amendments?
Let me do the big ones, and then we can kind of, maybe I'll entertain some discussion on whether it's important to really define those things. So my first big one, my wordy one, is the first whereas clause, which right now reads, whereas the City Council of East Lansing has determined to comprehensively examine the relationship between the police and the East Lansing community. And I don't think that's strong enough, and I don't think it's really representational of what we're trying to do. So I wanted to point that back to one of our strategic priorities, which is to implement the 6 pillars of 21st century policing. We've talked about that in other meetings, but essentially it's a more community-driven model of policing. So this is wordy, so just, bear with me as I read it. Whereas the City Council of the City of East Lansing has, since 2016, had as a strategic priority the implementation of the 6 pillars of the Task Force on 21st Century Policing, including the recommendation that building trust and nurturing legitimacy on both sides of the police-citizen divide is the foundational principle underlying the nature of relations between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve. Therefore, the City of East Lansing recognizes that the creation of an independent police review board is an important step in rebuilding a trusting relationship between the East Lansing Police Department and the East Lansing community, especially in regards to racial bias in enforcement and disparities in use of force.
Second.
Oh, are there any questions for Ms. Gregg? I have one question. Does that replace the first 3 whereases or only the first whereas?
Just the first whereas.
All right. Any questions for Ms. Gregg? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock. Okay.
Councilmember Babcock votes yes. Okay.
Councilmember Gregg.
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes.
Okay. So my next one is the number 6 in the makeup of the commission. The 4 additional residents of the City of East Lansing. Somebody who's better at math, simple arithmetic, just add up. If we remove the mayor as a member, does that leave us 1 short of an odd number? Do we need to change that to 5?
No, it's 11, I think still.
It's 11.
No, we
No,
remove.
6, 7, 8, 9.
As she's talking about voting members
Yeah,
specifically.
there's 11 members still.
They're still, okay. So right now it says 4 additional residents of the City of East Lansing. I think that in our testimony that we've heard from the community, our police officers police people outside of East Lansing. I think that if we have members with relevant expertise to this committee who are not necessarily East Lansing residents, and I think we have had other city committees that have had non-residents on them. I think the Financial Health Review team had a non-East Lansing chairperson. So I would like to amend that to say 4 additional residents of the City of East Lansing or individuals with pertinent expertise.
Second.
I just have a correction, Ms. Gregg. There's an even number. If the mayor is not voting, then it's 10 because number 8 is also a non-voting member. So there are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 4 is 10. So we could make that 5 members. Is that what you want to?
Yep, I would like to. Yep, I'd like to make that.
Meadows. Councilor Meadows.
This doesn't really. We don't say in the introduction that these are 11 voting members. We say there are 11 members of the commission. So if you need an odd number, then we need to add a number here someplace. But if you don't need an odd number, we don't need to do that.
I think it's helpful to have an odd number just so that there's no, I don't know what the structure of this study group is going to have, but I think there's going to be instances when things will be voted on. And if there's removing the possibility of a tie is just, clerically convenient. So I would change
Take that as
to
a friendly amendment, that 5 members. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Stevens.
Just as a side note, when I made the amendment last time, I mentioned this before, but if you guys would be willing, on number 2, we have 1 member from the city's Human Relations Commission, and all previous iterations of a resolution like this, we had always had 2 members of the Human Relations Commission.
I'm not going to consider that an amendment to her amendment. Why don't you hang on to that, Mr.
Okay.
Stevens, and we'll make that another amendment. So Jesse, unless you want to change your amendment and withdraw it and restate it.
I think I'll stick with 4. Gosh, okay, that makes it a little bit more complicated. I prefer to have an odd number, but I like Aaron's idea, so I will stick with 4 and just include the language at the end of that line, or individuals with pertinent expertise.
Okay, so the amendment that you're proposing is just to change number 4.
Number
Sorry,
6.
Number
Number
6.
6, yeah.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
And it's
good.
been moved and seconded. Mr. Meadows.
Okay, just a real question on that. Did we leave it at 5 or did you change it back to 4?
I changed it back to 4.
Okay, and I'll just point out that even with 5, another member of the Human Relations Commission could be appointed in that place. The other provisions are just at a minimum. We have to have this number on there. Okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right, will the clerk please call the roll on Ms. Gregg's amendment?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes.
Okay. Then I had another little short paragraph after the list of members, with the idea that the mayor will not be serving as chair, just to indicate that a chairperson will be elected from within the appointed members during the first meeting. I don't know if we need that. I think that's general operating procedure, but if we need, I don't know.
I don't think we need it.
Okay, so then my next one is in the paragraph, to the greatest extent possible, the committee should include individuals from affected communities such as African Americans, Latinos, Muslims, and immigrants. And then another add-on to the end of that line, and people whose professional experience will lead to better understanding of appropriate policing methods for de-escalation and enhanced community relations.
Second.
Any questions for Ms. Gregg? Will the clerk, Mr. Stevens, did I see your hand?
Yes, if that's okay. Thank you. Yeah. So I guess I would love for you to expand a little bit more on this topic, just because, I think that in your amendment that just recently passed, that was talking about members with expertise. I know that the goal of that amendment was to open that beyond members of the City of East Lansing, but I also do believe that that was somewhat accomplished in this. And I think that obviously the point of that phrase right there was to make sure that affected communities were represented. And while I am all for expertise on this panel, I do believe that is an important clause to remain how it is, just because it's stating something clear that we want those affected classes to be.
Yeah, so I actually have another amendment. I don't know if this, I'm going to jump ahead and preview my next one, which is on the be it further resolved clause. Let's see, if the committee membership is unable to be filled with individuals identified numbers 1 through 5, blah, 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 the mayor, subject to approval by the city council, shall appoint East Lansing residents to fill those positions to the greatest extent possible with individuals from the affected communities as described above.
Okay, do you want a friendly amendment to just take those 2 up at the same time, that those 2 language changes?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
I accept that.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that then one more time? for me.
So it's the full paragraph as amended would read, be it further resolved, to the extent the committee membership is unable to be filled with individuals identified in numbers 1 through 5 of the above paragraphs within 60 days of the passage of this resolution, the mayor, subject to approval of the city council, shall appoint East Lansing residents to fill those positions to the greatest extent possible with individuals from the affected communities as described above.
Okay, any more questions for Miss Gregg? All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
No.
Mayor Byer.
Yes. Anything else, Ms. Gregg?
Just the clarifying of language that refers to this as a study group and my preferred name for the body that may or may not be convened by this as a review board as opposed to an oversight committee. But I'm willing to give on those if it doesn't seem critical.
Can I make a suggestion
Yes.
on this? I thought Ray Vlassen's comments with regard to sort of the name of the committee or commission were pretty appropriate. And it was almost the same as what Councilmember Gregg was referring to. It would be to change the name to a study committee on an independent police oversight commission. And I'll move that we do that. I think that
throughout the whole resolution.
It changes throughout to refer to it as the study committee from that point forward.
I'll second that. Councilmember Babcock?
I was going to second.
Oh, council seconded by Councilmember Babcock. All right, any questions for either person? All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes. All right, and then Ms. Gregg, the other name that you wanted to change was the actual commission. What did you want?
It hasn't been invented yet, so it probably doesn't. We probably don't have to be too critical of the name. I just think review board. Legally, I'm not sure. Oversight to me has a legal connotation, and within the confines of all of the legal confines that we have, I'm just not sure that we will be able to have oversight at the end of this, but we can definitely have review. So just a review board as opposed to an oversight committee. And I've read through, I haven't deeply read a lot of other municipal ordinances, but I have read summaries of other municipal ordinances, and those two phrases seem to be used fairly interchangeably across. So I think it ultimately is probably moot.
And I also think that the commission, the ad hoc committee itself can come up with a name.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Part of their mission.
Councilmember Babcock.
I have two amendments I'd like to put up.
Okay.
The first would to strike the MSU Police Department on page 3, paragraph 3. So the paragraph would read, be it further resolved, the mission of the committee shall be to take testimony and review evidence relating to the relationship between the East Lansing Police Department and members of the East Lansing community, etc. We have no jurisdiction over the MSU Police Department. And my concern is we're giving folks a big job. They have a lot to do. And I don't want them, I don't want their time taken up by complaints that we can't fix with the MSU Police Department. So then my second amendment would be to strike the non-voting member from Michigan State University as well.
Can we do one at a time?
We can. I just wanted to.
Councilmember Meadows.
I just point out that language, that the first one, we've already changed all that language.
Yeah.
There's no
Great.
reference to
Okay.
MSU in it.
So we fixed that for you.
Excellent. So now that that's fixed, I'd like to strike the non-voting member from Michigan State University.
Okay, I'll second that. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure. It's just, first, I have an aversion to non-voting members. I think it just, when you don't have a vote on the panel, hard to show up and do the work. Secondly, they have a lot of concerns, and certainly right now they have a lot of concerns with COVID-19. ELPD is not one of them. So it
That's a
seems
good point.
unnecessary to seat them.
That's an interesting point. All right. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions for Councilmember Babcock? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
No.
Mayor Byer.
No. Okay, the amendment passes. Anything else, Councilmember Babcock?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
I'll
Sorry,
offer.
I got you.
My bad.
Go ahead, Mr. Stevens. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll make a motion to amend item number 2 under the 11 members to change 1 member to 2 members from the city's Human Relations Commission.
I'll second that. I think you've already spoken to that. Any questions for Mr. Stevens? All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes. Are there any other amendments? Councilmember Meadows?
Okay, one last amendment from me, which would be at the end of, we've stricken number 8, so at the end of 7 or 6 or whatever we have now, I would add this sentence: the mayor shall serve as a liaison to the study group.
Just a question before I second that. We already have a section that says that a council member will serve. Are you aware that we already have a council member will serve?
Well, it isn't, did we put that down there?
Yes.
Yes.
We added that to your
Amendment. It was part of Mr. Stevens' amendment. It struck mayor and said council person. It struck chair and put in liaison. Which, not that it matters, is what I would prefer.
You would prefer that it be a council member as opposed to the mayor?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll withdraw my motion.
Right. Any other amendments? Okay, my iPad just died, but I think we are on the main motion, which is the adoption of the resolution as amended today. Can I have a second, please?
I seconded it originally.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Is there any more discussion? All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes. So the resolution has passed, and I congratulate everyone on their work on this. We are going to take a 10-minute break. It is 9:28, so we'll be back at 9:38. See you then.
Understood.
Okay. Nicole, are we back?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 4.2, consideration of a special assessment roll number 75 to support the principal shopping district, which includes the downtown management board project. Ms. Johannes? I think you're muted, Mr. Johannes.
I think Amy's going to talk about it, isn't she?
Right, I think.
Yeah, turn it over to Mrs. Schuessler to lead us through this item.
Thank you.
Great. Good evening, Council. This is the second and final scheduled public hearing regarding special assessment number 75. As City Council is aware, the Downtown Management Board serves as the manager of the principal shopping district and focuses its efforts on marketing, business relations, and events management for the downtown district. For your consideration this evening is a proposed resolution and the special assessment rule 75, which would assess the existing property owners during their summer taxes to again support the activities of the Downtown Management Board. The total amount to be assessed is $44,407, and it would be in place for 1 year's time. It would begin to be assessed for the July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021 time period. I would like to note one minor adjustment to the special assessment. Since our meeting on May 12th, the property owner did reach out to staff and the city assessor's office and confirmed that a basement space was not to be accessed because it was currently being utilized as storage. So the assessment has been decreased by $63.80. And the city assessor's office has confirmed the assessment roll before you. And this item is scheduled for consideration of a vote this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions for Ms. Schuessler-Smith? Okay, so this is a public hearing. So hang on a second, let me get to it. Number 4.2. Ms. Bartel, will you please go down the phone list to see if anybody would like to speak on this issue?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The first caller is phone number ending in 333.
Pass.
Thank you. The next caller is phone number ending in 963.
Pass.
Thank you. And the final caller is phone number ending in 203. Again, this is caller ending in 203. Okay, and that concludes the caller list. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So bringing this back to council, I will move approval of the special assessment roll number 75 as described in 4.2. Could I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Meadows. Any questions? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is 4.3, consideration of the fiscal year 21 community development block grant budget. And that would be, again, Ms. Schuessler-Smith.
Yes, thank you. So before you this evening is your second and final publicly noticed hearing regarding the fiscal year 21 community development block grant budget. As city council members are aware, the city of East Lansing is deemed a community development block grant entitlement community, which means that we receive funds annually from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The proposed budget before you is in the total amount of $492,100. Within that, it includes recommendations of funding for both the payoff, actually the final payment regarding the Section 108 loan, housing projects that include our down payment assistance program and housing rehabilitation program, the special economic development project, which includes our new business support program as part of a relief package, and then administration costs. This item is on the agenda for consideration this evening through a vote, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for staff? Okay, this is a public hearing. Ms. Bartel, will you please go through the phone numbers again?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Again, this is caller number 333.
Pass.
Thank you. And caller with phone number ending in 646, if you would like to address council on this topic, you may do so now.
Pass.
Thank you. Oh, Mayor?
Sorry, is that the last one?
Nope, there are two more.
Oh, I thought you said that was the last one. Sorry. My mistake. Yep.
The next caller is caller ending in 963.
Pass.
Thank you. And this is the final caller, caller ending in 203. And hearing none. Thank you, Mayor. That concludes the callers.
Thank you. All right, so bringing this back to council, I will move approval of the fiscal year 21 community development block grant budget as described in item 4.3. Could I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Meadows. Any questions, comments? All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes. All right, the next item is 4.4, consideration of ordinance 1480, an ordinance to recognize Albert Avenue right-of-way and the city parking lot number 4 from C community facilities to B3 city center commercial district. Mr. Lahanas. You're muted, Mr. Lahanas.
Dave will be presenting this.
Okay,
Dave, are you on the phone?
there he is.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Great, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep,
All right.
you're good, go.
All right. Good evening. So this is a proposal to rezone the property Lot 4 and a portion of Albert right-of-way from C Community Services to City Center Commercial. The proposal is to combine the parking lot and the vacant land created by the Albert Avenue realignment for the MSU FCU branch intern center event space and future office use. The proposed building is up to an 8-story building, 112 feet. The status of the MSU FCU application, they have not submitted an application currently, but they're working diligently to do so. Their target was to submit something this week. We'll see if they do that. The total site size is 0.3 acres. The master plan designates the property as M4, which is our most intensive downtown development district. The intent of that category is to increase diversity in housing and commercial office activity and to draw employers to the area. Buildings are allowed up to 10 stories and 140 feet. The M4 future land use category is most analogous to the B3 zoning district. So the proposed district is in line with the future land use designation. The B3 zoning district, city center commercial, allows multiple categories of height and up to 140 feet with a special use permit and 3/4 vote of city council. The proposal was distributed to city agencies, engineering, fire, police, etc., with no concerns reported. The Planning Commission and Downtown Development Authority met in January and both with a recommendation, a unanimous recommendation for approval. With that, I would take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Haywood? Okay, this is a public hearing. Ms. Bartel, will you please call the phone numbers that are still on?
Yes, the first caller is phone number 333.
Pass.
Thank you. The next caller is 646.
Pass.
Thank you. The next caller is 963.
Alice Drager, 621 Sunset Lane. Just a question about whether or not People's Church and the other landowners around this were aware of this. I suppose they probably got a notice on it. I hope so, because this snuck up on me without any warning, so I didn't have time to tell the people who are immediately adjacent. This was a big break, obviously, between January and now, caused by, to some degree, unforeseen circumstances, although I expected this to have been taken up in February. So thank you. That's all.
Mr. Haywood, have the surrounding property owners been notified?
Yes, they were. Everyone within 300 feet was notified.
Thank you. Councilmember Babcock.
Thank you. Can you, actually, I'm concerned about that gap between January. Can you tell me how recently they were notified?
Mr. Haywood?
I don't have the exact date without going through the file, but they would have been noticed probably in December.
Councilmember Babcock.
No, I'm sorry. That would have been for the Planning Commission public hearing. For this public hearing, they were notified. I think we set the public hearing for this in late April. So they would have been noticed in April.
Okay, you're confident late April.
Beg your pardon?
Okay, you're confident it's late April, right? Because
Yes.
with all that's going on, I just don't want people caught off guard. So thank you.
Anybody else? Councilmember Stevens.
Yeah, could you just give us a general update on that project at this point?
So they have not submitted an application at this point. I think the due date for the June 24th Planning Commission public hearing is tomorrow. I think that was their target. We'll see if they stick to that. So we would expect to see tomorrow a complete application for the proposal.
Okay, understood. Oh, sorry, I have one follow-up. Do you know when that would be available to the public or for maybe a council member to look at?
Well, if it's submitted tomorrow, it would be available, upon its receipt.
To the public as well?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Okay, so
Mayor, there is one more caller.
Oh, sorry. Let's go. One more caller.
That's okay. This is caller number 203. And one more time, this is caller number 203. Okay, and that concludes the public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. So that closes the public hearing portion of this, and I will move approval of approval of ordinance 1480, an ordinance to rezone Albert Avenue right-of-way and city parking lot 4 from C, community facilities, to B3, city center commercial district as described in 4.4. Could I please have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Meadows. Any more discussion? Questions? All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes. The next item, 4.5. This is a public hearing to consider approval of the City of East Lansing Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus CDBG-CV budget as a substantial amendment to the 2019 action plan, substantial amendment to the 2016 through 2020 consolidated plan, and to notice the amendment to the City of East Lansing Citizen Participation Plan. So this is who's the staff person on this, Mr.?
Ms. Schuessler again.
Okay, Ms. Schuessler-Schmidt.
Thank you. So as City Council is aware, we discussed during the May 12th meeting in March, Congress approved the CARES Act, which provides the City of East Lansing the opportunity to receive an additional $289,484 in CDBG, CV, or coronavirus funds. The funds must be used to specifically prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus outbreak. The proposed budget currently before you for the use of funds is as follows: $121,820 towards the housing relief program and $167,664 towards the business grant support program. Both of those are new programs, and so proposed program guidelines are within your packet materials. It's important to point out that in order to accept and allocate the CDBG CV funds, the City Council must determine which program year that they would like to affiliate the funds with. So the options are program year 19, which is our fiscal year 20, or program year 20, which is our fiscal year 21. Based upon discussion with City Council during our last meeting, they had determined at that point you had directed staff to look into the program year 19 direction because the funds will be accessible more quickly. And so that is what you have before you this evening. You have both the program guidelines, you have an amended program year 2019 action plan, which outlines the use of the CDBG CV funds per HUD's guidance and direction. You have a recommended amendment to the consolidated plan document, which is our 5-year forecast on how we will prepare and use the funds. So for the 2016 to 2020 time period, so that will end next spring. And then finally changes to our citizen participation plan. So once the coronavirus pandemic hit, municipalities were provided the opportunity per HUD to waive a public comment period, essentially to limit it and to have it go from 30 days to 5-day public comment period. That is obviously to be able to access the funds more quickly so that we can respond to the outbreak. And so that information has now been placed within our participation plan so that if we ever have a state of emergency again, we can lessen the time period. The 5-day public comment period did begin of last week and ended at 5 p.m. today. We did not receive any public comments related to either of the documents or the citizen participation plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Meadows.
Thanks. Amy, I just want to be sure on what we're being asked to do this evening.
Sure.
Is it just to vote on the substantial amendment to the 2019 action plan, the 2016-2020 consolidated plan document, and approval of the amendment to the citizens participation plan? Or are we being asked also to approve the business relief program guidelines that are attached here also?
Right. Thank you for the question. So for clarification, you're being asked to consider approval of actually 4 items. So the three items that you noted, the substantial amendment to the action plan document, the substantial amendment to the consolidated plan document, the changes to the citizen participation plan, and then ultimately the CV budget, the coronavirus budget.
Okay. Gotcha.
We will upload all of those changes in IDIS, which is the federal government system. So I will upload them once they are for council's approval and consideration. The guidelines of each program, certainly it is the intent of staff to get those up and running as soon as possible. Those do not have to be finalized in order for me to submit them to HUD. However, at the time of submission to, I would say within, a week, we would need to have those guidelines carried out because we need HUD to, have them in our policies and procedures so that they can be finalized with them. Does that make sense? So yes. Those 4 documents need to be approved this evening. But I think that if council does have changes to either the business relief or the housing support program, we would welcome those changes and be happy to discuss them. Ideally, we would get them approved tonight, but we do have some time.
Okay, I think that Mr. Meadows was just trying to clarify the question that we're going to ask to make sure we covered everything. Is that correct, Mr. Meadows?
Yeah, I just want to know, and I guess another question would be, can we do this in one motion? Or do we need to do separate motions for each of these?
My motion was going to be after the public hearing to approve the City of East Lansing CDBG CV budget and all items in 4.5 as described by staff.
I'll be seconding that.
Okay, so now I don't have to state that again. I want everybody to know remember what that was. So any more questions for staff? All right, this is a public hearing. Ms. Bartel, will you please read the numbers?
Yes, the first caller is ending in 333.
Pass.
Thank you. The next caller is 646.
Pass.
Thank you. The next caller is 963.
Pass. Pass.
Thank you. The next caller is 971.
Hi, my name is Anna Fisher, and I believe Ms. Schlusler said that the public comment period was over, but I would still like to make my comments to be on the record. I'm disappointed to hear that the public comment is passed. I just wanted to say that it's well known that the coronavirus is disproportionately hitting people of color, and I would like to advocate that the funds prioritize Black and Brown owned businesses, and if there aren't any in East Lansing, to use it to help Black and Brown micro businesses that those people who don't have access to government loans. I'm not sure how flexible the funding is, but there's an organization in Lansing called One Love Global, and it serves Black and Brown youth county-wide. And it seems like that would be a very beneficial use of some of the CDBG coronavirus funds. But it sounds like maybe I'm too late to weigh in on that, but I thought it was important to say that.
Thank you very much for that comment. Are there any other numbers, Ms. Bartel?
There is just one more. Oh.
Yep.
Member Meadows? No? Okay. One more caller is 203. And one more time, this is 203. Okay, hearing none.
Okay.
The end of the caller list.
Thank you. So that closes the public hearing portion. I'm now bringing this back to council, and you've heard my motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Stevens. Any questions?
Oh.
Councilmember Meadows and then Councilmember Stevens.
Not a question, just a comment to that last caller. This is a public hearing, so her comments are part of the record that we will be considering. So the public comment period is a federal public comment period that is something different than her ability to communicate with us. So just want to make that.
Councilmember Stevens.
Hey, so I just wanted to say I really appreciate the work on both of these programs. I think this is definitely where money should be going. I think that there are a lot of places that are hurting right now, but I do think that housing assistance and helping our businesses out is a good effort on our part. I'm happy that we have access to these funds. I appreciate the level of detail in the programming, as well as even the FAQ that was listed under the housing assistance and the business assistance, just because I think it does answer some questions that even I've been getting from community members. So thank you again. I'm happy to support this. I'm really hoping that this helps some folks out.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll on the question?
Councilmember Babcock?
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg?
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Byer?
Yes. Okay, now we're on to, the resolution passes, and now we're on to item number 4. Item number 5, the business agenda. The first item on the business agenda will be the last item on the consent agenda that was taken off, which be consideration of a policy resolution 2020-03, a resolution concurring with service reductions. Will you please explain this program, Mr. Lahanis?
Yes, so this is seeking council support for a participation in the state's work share program, whereby city staff would be taking partial time reductions and supplementing their pay with unemployment. And then for that, the city would be obviously saving the wage time that they're not working for the city. So this also fits with the city's plan to try to promote social distancing when we return to work by not having the full staff in the building at any given time. So to provide for more opportunities for distancing in the workplace, because as you see when you walk in there, people are quite tightly packed. So I think it serves a number of purposes, but the primary purpose is saving money because obviously we have a financial challenge looming with the COVID crisis hitting the state. It also provides for a commensurate reduction in service hours during June and July, when we envision likely one day closed to the public, whereby we could have the higher reduction levels in staffing at front desk operations so that staff could be present fewer days for customer service windows. So that's what it's looking for.
Thank you. What other questions do you have there, Mr. Stevens?
I have one question. I'm very supportive of this, and I appreciate willingness to pull it off and talk about it. The program at this point via the state is going until the end of July at this point, correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay. Mayor, I will move this policy resolution 2020-03, a resolution concurring with service reductions.
I will second. Any other discussion?
I have one tiny amendment. That is all right.
Sure.
In the last paragraph, now therefore it be resolved. I would like the paragraph to now read, now therefore it is resolved that the City Council of the City of East Lansing concurs in the decision of the city manager to participate in the state of Michigan's work share program and thereby reduce the number of hours city employees are working for the city to and make a corresponding reduction in the hours the city is able to provide services to the public until the end of July 2020, unless the state of Michigan's quote work share program end quote is extended further. That's my amendment.
Yeah, I think it's a federal work share program, not a state of Michigan.
It was referenced
It's
as a state of
supplemented.
Michigan program
Okay.
in the resolution previously.
Okay. And what are you trying to do here, Mr. Stevens?
I just got a comment from a member of the public that was talking about this is a great program, but you know, a reduction in hours seems scary to some workers, and that it might. I think that we all have an understanding of what this is, what we're doing here. I think the city manager does as well. But just putting in there that this is really contingent on that work share program, and that, you know, we're not looking to reduce the hours of people, you know, when they can't get paid, that's really
Gotcha.
valuable.
Mr. Johannes.
So I would not want to infer that anything we're doing says that there can't be layoffs in the future if we have financial calamity hit the city. We've had to lay people off in the past, and we may well have to do it again. Obviously, the point of this is to try to avoid that with this layoff when people have a very soft landing. So that's the goal. And certainly with the work share program, I think that that's a fair statement. I just want to make sure that we're not saying and committing to the next year that we wouldn't do any layoffs or reductions in time. We're not planning that at this point, but I wouldn't want to say that and then not have the ability to reduce staff if an emergency develops.
No, of course not. And the only reason why I wanted to make this amendment is because this resolution is specifically stating that the city council is supportive of the reduction of hours based on the work share program. So I just wanted to, you know, because this isn't even something, this is just a statement of support. So stating that we support it until the end of the work share program. If decisions have to be made after the fact, this in no way would prevent that from happening. This is just that clarification. So.
Mr. Meadows?
I'll just say that was my interpretation of the amendment as well. I don't think this limits any future activity. This permits you to take action which is consistent with the work share program as long as that program's in existence.
Yeah.
Right. And I would actually ask you to withdraw your amendment, Mr. Stevens, because I think it's implied. The entire resolution is about the work share program. And I would hate to get entangled with this later on when we actually do, if we ever do need a layoff. I think that all of council can give the direction to Mr. Lahanas that what we support right now, even though we know you can do this without us, is the use of this program until it is gone. I don't think we actually need an amendment, so I'll be voting against the amendment.
That's fine.
Aaron, would you mind rereading that again, your amendment?
Yeah, I'll just read from city is able to provide services to the public onwards. City is able to provide services to the public until the end of July 2020, comma, unless the state of Michigan's quote work share program end quote is extended further. If there's not support for it on council, I'm fine to withdraw, but that was just a comment that was made to me from the public. I don't think this really hinders anything the city manager can do, but it might have been a clarification for some folks that were worried that their hours might have been reduced beyond what the program is. So.
And my point is, Councilmember Stevens, they might be. I mean, we may well need to reduce hours because we don't have any money. I mean, that is going to be ugly if this comes back around and somebody asks city council. And again, the city manager can do it without our support, I guess, but it just makes it.
That's more my point, is that this is a resolution for city council support of something, and
you will only support it at this point until.
I mean, it's based on a work share program that.
Okay.
You know.
All right. Any more questions for Mr. Stevens?
Yeah.
All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
No.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
No. Okay, the amendment passed. Are there any other amendments? So we're back to the original question as amended, which is policy resolution 20-03 as amended. Any other questions, amendments? All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Sorry,
Yes.
I think Councilmember Babcock. No, you're okay. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead, Jackson. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh.
Sure.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes. All right, now we move on to former item 5.1, consideration of the fiscal year 2021 through 2026 capital improvements program. Mr. Lahanas.
Yes, so this item, oh, wait a second, my agenda. Give me a second. I
Yeah.
lost my agenda.
Yeah, me too. I've done that about 10 times tonight.
Me too.
Okay, so staff introduced the capital improvement program at the council meeting on April 30th, 2020. Items specific to various departments were discussed at the May 12 and May 19, 2020 council meetings. As noted in the discussion, the CIP is required by state law to be updated annually and is intended to provide an order of priorities for city acquisition or construction projects planned over the next 6 years. It identifies needs as well as funding sources across departments, responsibilities for projects that have to be prioritized for completion. Approval of any expenditure is done through the budget process, and the CIP is intended more as a guide. Staff recommends the council approve the 2021 through 2026 capital improvements program.
So moved. Can I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Babcock. Any questions for Mr. Lahanas or any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Councilmember Gregg.
Muted.
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes. The fiscal year 2021-26 capital improvements program budget has been adopted, or program has been adopted. All right, we're on to 5.2, consideration of the fiscal year 2021 budget, tax rate, and fee structure, fee schedule. Mr. Lahanas, Ms. Felposh.
Yep, I'll ask Ms. Felposh to take over and present on the item.
Good evening. I'll be very brief, but I'll be happy to answer any questions or go into any details you want. But for you tonight is the fiscal year 21 budget, tax rate, and fee schedule resolution. Included in the memo, the agenda item report, is the differences between the resolution and what was in the preliminary budget that was delivered to you in April. So I'll go over those differences really quickly. In the general fund, we removed the sidewalk program that was going to be funded by CDBG because that money was reallocated to the business support program. We removed that from the general fund. And then on the CDBG, we just highlighted that the allocation is different. The total dollar amount is not different. It's just what it's allocated to. And then the DMB has a small reduction of $4,530. That's due to the special assessment being lower, so being the same as fiscal year 20. The original budget included a small increase, but that was removed. And then finally, in the fee schedule, there were some changes to the parking permit fees. So there was a recommendation in the original preliminary budget to increase the permit fees, but those have been eliminated. So I'm happy to go into further details if you would like, but it's 10:14, so I will just answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you to you and your team, all the departments that are doing so much on this and working with numbers that you might not know. So I really do appreciate answering every question that you can. Just a question on the changes to the fee schedule. You talked about it at the last meeting and our last public hearing. Does this accomplish everything that you had set out in that meeting as changes to the fee schedule based on like your understanding of the parking department and business fees that we had laid out?
Yeah, so the business license fees was a separate resolution, and that actually affected the current fiscal year. So that's not reflected in this resolution because that's for next fiscal year. But for the parking situation, yes, we confirmed with parking that based on the conversation at the last meeting, that those were all the changes that they were envisioning.
Okay, awesome.
Any other questions? Will the clerk please call? Oh, we need a motion. I move approval of the fiscal 2021 budget tax rate and fee schedule. Could I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Meadows. Any more discussion?
Thank you, everybody. Seriously.
All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Councilmember Meadows,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor Byer.
Yes. And that is the end of the agenda. Good work tonight. See you next time.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night, all.
Good night.
Good night.